Very much. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the December 14th Park and Recreation Commission meeting. Before we start, because we're all involved in sports and open space and recreation, it's worth noting that there was a historic achievement about an hour ago when Mr. Curry from the Warriors broke the three-point shooting record, and I think it's definitely worth noting. So with that, on that note, if we could take a roll, please.
Yes. Chair Cribbs.
Here.
Vice Chair Greenfield.
Here.
Commissioner Moss.
Here.
Commissioner Recknall.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Lemaire.
Here.
And we have Council Liaison Koo is not able to join us today.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Chair, we have 6 present.
Thank you. And are there any agenda changes, requests, or deletions? Okay, hearing none. Lam, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak under oral communications on topics not on the agenda?
Yes, we do. We have 2 hands. We have first speaker is Kathy Mock, and to be followed by Linda Fletcher. Kathy, if you can give me a moment here, and I'll let you know when to begin. Kathy, if you could unmute yourself, and it'll be for 2 minutes public speaking, please.
Okay, great. Can you hear me all?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm speaking to you on behalf of the Friends of the Rinconada Pool. Some of us are here tonight. I know Linda and hopefully Barbara will be joining us as well. We first want to just introduce who we are. So we're a group of swimmers who lap swim at Rinconada Pool, and we've organized in the past about 3 years because we've noticed that there wasn't really a voice for swimmers, whereas like other groups like the Master Swimmers and PASA have a direct contact with pool management. So we've been volunteering our time to be a voice for lap swimmers. So our purpose is to serve as an independent, inclusive, and transparent group that represents our interests as lap swimmers at Rinconada, and to facilitate communication and problem solving between lap swimmers, the city of Palo Alto, and the management of the pool. So we've been meeting pretty consistently with the city and the pool management since 2019. And today we have a few concerns that we'd like to bring to your attention. And I should say that we've met with pool management and talked about these very same concerns. Barbara speak. 2 of our biggest concerns are the current pricing structure of the pool, which has seen since the pandemic a pretty sharp increase of price, but it's disproportionately towards Palo Alto residents and specifically Palo Alto seniors. And then also, Linda will probably address some of the scheduling changes. So in addition to seeing an increase for prices that disproportionately affects the lap swimmers, we've also seen reduced access to the pool and scheduling, leading to more crowding. So I hope you can appreciate our concerns, and hopefully we can have a say in changing some of the management practices at the pool. All right, I made it in my 2 minutes.
Okay, our next speaker is Linda Fletcher. Linda, you may begin. Linda, are you able to hear us? Sure, how about we go to the next speaker and then come back to Linda Fletcher. Chair, are you able to hear me?
I am not, I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear anybody. I could hear you, but no speakers. I think we were waiting for Linda and then going to Barbara. Is that correct?
How about we skip Linda for now, go to the next speaker, and then return back to Linda?
Okay, and the next speaker looks like it's Ken Horowitz.
That's
Is that
correct.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Ken Horowitz, and I'm a resident here on Homer Avenue. And I want to support your concepts to build a city gym. And I wanted to give you an idea that I've been proposing to the city council, and that will help you raise the funds that you'll be necessary to sustain if you do get a city gym. And that is what we call a sugar sweetened beverage tax. I'm a health instructor over at Foothill College, and I'm sure you're well aware of that. The two most important things regarding health are exercise and diet. And I want to focus, of course, on the impact of sugar that has on our overall health. And so I've proposed to the city council, and I'd like the Park and Recs Commission to support me when it comes forward, to have a 2 cents per ounce on every sugar beverage drink. As you're probably aware of, there's a lot of sugar in these drinks. We're now seeing an influx of what we call boba teas, and these boba teas are full of sugar. And of course, sugar leads to all the chronic diseases like obesity and diabetes and heart disease, etc. So I'd like to encourage the Park and Rec Commission to support a sugary beverage tax to the city council so that it can raise approximately $2 million. I anticipate that we could raise $2 million yearly if such a tax was passed. We have it in Berkeley, San Francisco, Oakland, Albany, and a number of other cities in the United States. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lamb, are we going back now to Linda Fletcher?
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Linda, if you could give it a second try, please.
Lam, is it possible to move on to the department report and then return if Linda is able to reconnect?
I am not familiar with procedurally wise whether that's allowed. I would like to default to you as chair if that's what you'd like to do.
Okay, well, let's wait another 30 seconds for Linda and see what happens. Okay, perhaps we could ask Linda if she's listening to put her comments in a letter and in an email and send it to us, and we'll make sure that all the commissioners see what she has to say. And then I don't see any other hands, Lum. So could we just thank everybody for participating this evening and move to the department report?
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to proceed with the department report. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Darren Anderson with the Community Services Department. Give you a brief update on the Rinconada Park project. It's going well and on target to be completed in February. Again, this is mainly focusing on the playgrounds and the replacement of the existing walkways. The repairs for the synthetic turf at El Camino Park are being scheduled. We anticipate that'll be in approximately 1 month. The availability of the contractor isn't quite as near term as we had hoped, but we're scheduling that now. The infill replacement for Stanford Palo Alto, this is one we've been working on for a little while now, is tentatively planned for June 2022. City staff completed turf renovations. This is natural grass at Eleanor Pardee Park at the end of November. So this was all done with in-house staff. We haven't been able to do many renovations because of the budget cuts, but we're trying to get creative with our own team to get as many as we can. So that field at Eleanor Pardee will remain closed until March 14th, 2022. And essentially just giving the turf a chance to recover, regrow in a healthy stand that can hold up to athletic field use. Similarly, we had the Coverley turf field. This is the natural grass field at Coverley, renovated by our contractor last week. We found some additional funding to help support that. And again, that field was struggling from heavy use and not enough rest or renovation. So those fields will remain closed until February 25th, 2022. We were discussing last meeting if we could have an update on the Bayland signage project. John Aiken informed me that his staff refer to this as the Friendship Trail. And the next steps are to go to council for approval of a deed restriction and a budget change order, fabrication, which is going to take about 2 months, and then installation to happen sometime between now and February. And they anticipate the project being completed by February 2022. Skate park, we recently met with the ad hoc committee and Sam and some of the stakeholders from the skate park advocacy group to discuss next steps. That was on December 9th. We're working on the plan for how to do and what to include on a community meeting to reach out to the neighbors, the park users, and the broader skateboarding community about the next steps for this skate park that we want to do. And after this community meeting, it'll come back to the full commission for a recommendation to council, and then of course on to council. I also wanted to mention that the Friends of Palo Alto Parks indicated their support for fundraising for this project once we get council approval. The grand reopening of Mitchell Park Teen Center will be celebrated from January 10th to January 14th, 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. on those days. There'll be workshops, activities, healthy cooking, graphic design, entrepreneurship, make-X, fashion design, and art workshops are just a few of the programs that will be offered during this week. Free food, video games, resources, and information booths, and various competitions such as basketball, ping pong, and dodgeball will be available at that grand opening. The Mitchell Park Teen Center is open to all Palo Alto students 6th through 8th grade. The children's theater classes are on track to sell out for the winter session, with creative dramatics and acting classes for youth and teens already sold out with wait lists. The Art Center youth and adult ceramics classes sold out the weekend that registration opened, and other visual arts are offerings are filling up very quickly. The JMZ is going strong. We opened to its full schedule. That's now Tuesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on December 21st. The December dates are nearly sold out, and over 650 memberships have been sold since memberships went on sale in October of 2021. Just a reminder, due to the capacity limitations, advanced ticket purchases are strongly encouraged. And for more information, you can visit cityofpaloalto.org/JMZ. Other recreation classes are also filling up fast. Registration opened on December 2nd for residents, December 9th for non-residents, and they're about 60% full. With just a little over 1 week since enrollment began, we've seen an increase in revenues of 33% over the final numbers from last winter. We're still trying to meet demand of the community with outdoor classes like tennis, soccer, and pickleball, which are the most popular. And we added 7 more tennis classes this winter. And our soccer contractor is trying to provide additional coaches so we can add more soccer as well. The Rinconada Pool contractor, Tim Sheeper, is working on staff recruitment so they can offer more lessons within the next month or two. The grand opening of the Highway 101 pedestrian bike bridge was held on November 20th. It was a well-attended event. Staff observed that a lot of the use of the new bridge over the last few weeks. And so far, it seems to be a great success. There's a holiday home and business decorating contest going on right now. It's sign up to participate on this decorating contest by December 15th. And you can visit this by going to cityofpaloalto.org/events. And then you'll see a link to the decoration contest. It's also a holiday toy drive. You can drop off unwrapped gifts at Lucy Stern Community Center by December 15th. And for more information, that one's at cityofpaloalto.org/toy drive. At City Council meeting last night, it was determined that we will defer a resuming of in-person hybrid meetings for board, committee, and commissions meetings until March 2022. So we will remain remote until that time. And as soon as I have any new information on that, I'll be sure to share with the commission. Also at City Council meeting last night, we appointed positions for the Park and Recreation Commission. Congratulations to Commissioner Chair Ann Cribbs and Vice Chair Jeff Greenfield, both appointed to new 3-year terms, and the new Commissioner Nellis Freeman Jr., also a 3-year term, and Shawnee Kleinhaus appointed to a 1-year term. Commissioner Rectal was appointed to the Planning and Transportation Commission. Congratulations. His position on the Park and Recreation Commission couldn't be filled last night because it wasn't noticed. So that will have to be filled at a future council meeting. And I'll update you when I get timeframes on when that might be. Other council news, January 10th, council will review the NVCAP concept plan. Council will be on recess from December 15th through January 2nd. And when they return, they have a council retreat plan for Saturday, February 5th. I was asked for some updates on Coverley. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of information other than in February, staff will be bringing status updates on Coverley to City Council. And so I'll send you information when I get a date on that. But that'll include a status update on Coverley Master Plan and everything else kind of going on with Coverley at the moment. At our October meeting, we had an agenda item regarding creating an ad hoc committee for Measure E area over at Bixby Park. I was tasked with confirming what the city's process will be for boards and commissions to add things like this to our council approved work plan. And I was informed that staff should bring this issue to policy and services. If policy and services agree unanimously, I believe it can go to council on consent. Likewise, the Parks and Recreation Commission recommendation on the new gym was directed to bring that to policy services first, and then that also would go to City Council. And Chair, that concludes the department report.
Well, that was quite a report, Darren. Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I ask any commissioners if anybody has any questions for Darren?
I had a question about the Coverley Field. What is the renovation actually doing? Was it just reseeding, or is it more detailed than that?
Slightly, yes. So we end up aerating is one of the core things that just takes time and part of the resting process, plus the seed gets in there, and fertilizing. So aerating, seeding, fertilizing, and then the rest itself.
But no irrigation changes?
Yes, we do. I mean, that's the perfect opportunity to run all the heads and make sure we've got head-to-head coverage as best as we can. It's essential, especially when we've put down any nutrients to make sure it gets watered in quickly. So that happens too, but it's not like a major renovation of the irrigation system. No.
Okay.
I
Do we,
would. Sorry.
oh, go ahead, Jeff.
No, go, please finish.
Oh, do we aerate all fields regularly?
Regularly is sort of a loaded question, because ideally you'd be doing it really often. And there's different kinds of aeration. The ones that are most impactful are when you're pulling plugs. So you'll see those little, conical shaped plugs that you pull out. If you're not doing that, you're doing what's typically called slit seeding, where you're just carving into the dirt. It doesn't really relieve compaction. Your key question is, how often are we doing it, and are we doing it regularly? We try to do the athletic fields 3 times a year. Some of them are maintained by that contractor, Brightview, and that service was diminished when we had our budget cuts. We do intend to seek restoring that budget, and so that will help with renovations of other fields on greater regularity.
Thank you.
Vice Chair, do you have a question?
Sure, just to follow up, has there been any outreach to the field users and stakeholders to see if they would like to provide some gap funding for the aeration type services? I know this isn't the ideal way that staff would want to approach this, but I think there are resources in our community, and there may be willingness, if there's a clear understanding of what would be done in the time frame and the time period over which this would be done.
Yes, to some degree, not for all the playing fields, some particular ones. And typically it happens because the group has said, hey, we're not very pleased with the condition of this. Can we do something to help? And so we'll have that discussion, and it usually entails X amount of dollars for a given renovation. And they're on different, it's a scale, right? You can have some extreme ones where you do quite a bit of work, and others that are a little less pronounced. The challenge usually comes in when there's an expectation of, if I'm giving this amount of money, I expect that the ground and the turf is going to look like, you name it, right? Volvo Stadium or something. And unfortunately, it's not something staff can guarantee. We were actually asked for a guarantee, and that's not possible. You hope for the best weather, and you hope for things to take when you seed and everything to go well, but there are other criteria that sometimes we can't control.
Sure. Thank you. And in addition, the stakeholders will want guaranteed access to the fields, which isn't always possible to grant given the permitting and allocation process. The last comment I was going to make is just anecdotally, the grass fields at Coverley are in the poorest shape that I've seen in the last 10 or more years. So it's great that work's being done. It's desperately needed. So that was a wise prioritization choice.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Chair.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment that it's fantastic about the children's theater and the JMZ and the additional classes. It shows that we're bouncing back from COVID in a big way, and I hope that continues. The JMZ selling all those memberships, that's fantastic. And one other comment, and that is, when you do the Friendship Trail in February, I'd love it if there's a grand opening like you did with the 101 Bike Bridge, because that's a really nice addition to the Baylands.
Thanks, Commissioner Moss. I'll suggest that to John Aiken.
I was going to wait for the ad hoc, but maybe there isn't any ad hoc anymore. But any news on the Tidegate? When is Tidegate project? When is that supposed to start?
It will be 2023, September 2023, the construction.
Okay. All right. That's it.
So we've slipped a year.
That's correct. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Commissioner Moss, and the clarification, Vice Chair. We had planned for September 2022. And because of some delays in procurement and some other permitting issues for Valley Water, they've let us know that the construction won't start until the following September 2023.
Any other comments, Commissioner Brown or Lemaire? I don't hear any, and I just wanted to comment that I think it's a really good report, Darren, coming as we're trying to come out of COVID. I'm really happy that the field users, that the fields are having a look at, because it's so important for our kids to get on the fields and play athletics as we come out of that. And I'm really going to encourage all of us to work together to try to see if we can help with funding for those fields that are in need of it, if there's an easy way to do that that doesn't burden everybody too much. So anyhow, thank you very much for that report and all the work that's being done. Keith, could I congratulate you? All of the commission will miss you. But
Yes.
Congratulations on your new position. And when does that actually start, Darren? Because we have just a little bit more work on our recreational opportunities for Keith to continue to be involved in. So I have to set that meeting pretty fast.
That's a good question. I'll have to check with the clerk's office on, if only we could borrow Commissioner Rector on both commissions for a little while.
Well, that's exactly right. And I think I know that David will be leaving us and completing his term, but I'd like to wait until the end of the meeting to discuss that and salute the work that he's done. So, okay, I think that's it for now on that. We now go to another resolution that we have an action item on. Darren, would you take that, please, for us?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is adoption of a resolution authorizing the use of teleconferencing for Parks and Recreation Commission meetings during COVID-19 state of emergency. So this is the report, the same item that we had on our November agenda. It's required in order to host the Park and Recreation meetings remotely. And per council's action last night, we will continue to meet remotely through March 2022. And I think we just need the same motion as last time, Chair.
Okay, good. Can we have a motion, please?
I so move.
Second,
And a voice vote, Lon, please.
Yes. Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rekdal.
Yes. Oh,
I'm sorry.
I got promoted.
That is my mistake. Apologies to
for your last meeting, sure, go for it.
Yes.
I apologize to Vice Chair Greenfield. Vice Chair Greenfield, your vote, please.
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
and now Commissioner Rekdal,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
and Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Chair, that's a vote for 6-0.
Thank you so much. Moving now to the approval of the draft minutes from November 17th. Any discussion? Well, let's have a motion to approve and then we'll go to discussion. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. And a vote, please, Lum?
Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Rekdal,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Chair, that's a vote 6-0.
Great, thank you so much. All right, the next item on the agenda are the ad hoc and liaison updates. So let's start with the ad hoc committees, and we're going to hear from Foothills Nature Preserve. So I'm assuming that we don't need to have a report at this point. The Baylands Tide Gate has turned into a liaison position. Our fund development ad hoc is working, it continues to work with the Friends of the Parks and the Palo Alto Recreation Foundation for potential funding for both of those, both programs and parks. Mandy or Jeff, do you have anything to add there?
I do not.
Mandy?
No, thank you.
Yeah, I would just suggest that reading back over the minutes, we did put forth a lot of suggestions that our probably next step is to corral all of those and see how we get them all to work. The CIP review, we will have a discussion later on, so I'd like to move that to that discussion. David, is that okay with
Yep.
you?
Yep.
The racket court policy, Mandy and Keith, anything?
Nothing to report.
Dog parts and restrooms, I have nothing to report, Mandy.
Nothing to report.
And new recreational opportunities, Jeff and Keith, any comments?
You know, we still have a lot of work to do on the park, on the gyms. I really think that I've heard a lot of talk between residents and neighbors. There's a lot of support in the community, I think. I think it's, especially if we can get it privately funded. So I would encourage us to keep the pressure on.
Well, and you'll be cheering from afar, won't you?
Yes.
Not too far. Jeff, comments?
Yeah, I'll echo what Keith said as well in terms of my conversations with people, but just I'm excited that we're trying to move this forward and we're looking at possibilities. And I think that's a great thing with this project.
Well, I certainly echo both of your comments, Keith and Jeff, and I too have found, as just walking around in the community, a lot of support, a lot of ideas, a lot of people saying, yes, it's certainly time. And I think the timing of the article in the weekly and the front page story was excellent. And so I think that as soon as we can get our memo or our request to the Policy and Services Committee, the more good fortune we'll have. So thank you, everybody, for that. And thanks too for the commission for everybody's thoughtful comments.
Chair, on restrooms, is there an update on the Coverley Fields restroom?
Oh, good. I'm glad you asked that. Darren, do you have anything there?
I believe it'll be covered in the CIP.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, good. Thank you. So we'll push that off to the CIP. Sidewalk vendor policy.
No.
Is that a liaison role now?
I think it is. Yeah, I just didn't have it noted. Thank you for that. So let's move to the liaison roles now. In terms of aquatics, we're going to hear a report from Team Sheeper next in January. So that will be good. I have nothing to report on the Bayland's 10.5 community gardens.
No update. Waiting to hear who the new staff liaison is. Looking at Darren.
Yeah, good. And then Coverley, I know we all have questions about Coverley. Hopefully we'll hear something soon, Darren.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think that update to council in February, I don't know the exact date, would probably be the next opportunity.
I think so, because there's a lot of talk about those extra acres that the school board might want to share or sell or something. And I think people are interested in that, and also in the portables in the school moving in. So it'd be good to get that information. Field users, Jeff, we just heard about the fields, but if there's more, please go ahead.
No, that's all. It's some good news with a schedule for the work at El Camino Park to get some lines sewn back in.
Good. Commissioner Lemaire, anything about golf?
I expect to be able to hopefully report something about First Tee next month. But in terms of the golf course, revenue is up about 20% in this first 4 months of the fiscal year compared to the same period last year. So that's very positive.
Well, that's great. And anecdotally to the standing of the course, the desirability of the course is very strong in the greater Bay Area and even outside the Bay Area. So that's, it's good news. The Palo Alto Recreation Foundation, I don't have any update. Keith, anything about PAUSD?
The only thing, they did talk about Project Safety Net at the last meeting. At one time, we had a liaison with Project Safety Net, but Darren, do we have that anymore?
Not quite sure, Commissioner Rectal, but if you have any specific questions about it, I'm glad to check in.
No, I'm just curious that, do we want someone to just be involved? And, one thing that we've been looking at is recreation programs and we don't think that we're fully serving the youth. And so maybe they would have suggestions for that. And that might be a good conduit for them to insert programs that we are looking for. So maybe in February, when we do the retreat, we can look at, do we want to have some type of connection? So that's all.
Keith, did you hear anything about the move of Palo Verde to Coverley? Because I thought it was going to happen in January, but I don't see any portables being built.
Yeah, no updates.
Darren, have you heard anything?
No, I don't have any new news. I did ask today and I haven't gotten an answer yet.
Okay.
And just to clarify, I think that would be, ideally we'd know sooner, but I think that will be some of the information going to council in February.
Okay, sustainability, Mandy?
No updates, but if you do want just a general update on the process, there was a presentation to council on the 13th. So the staff report is available in materials online.
Okay.
Sorry, on the sustainability climate action plan. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, right. And where is that posted, Mandy?
The staff report is in the agenda packet in the agenda center. And then the YouTube video has the presentation as well as public comment, which was, there was a lot of public comment on that item. So I encourage you to watch it.
Good, thank you for that. Darren just mentioned the skateboard park. And so I think we feel like we're making some progress, Darren.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I felt promising coming out of that meeting. I think one of the changes I didn't mention is that Peter Jensen, the city's landscape architect, is being willing to lend a hand and help organize things for the community meeting, which is our next step, and highlighted just a little bit about those little work to prepare for it and making sure we have a vision from the skateboarders that we think we can support, and makes it just a little easier when you go into the broader community meeting.
Good. Urban forestry. Keith,
Yes,
or
the liaisons, Commissioner Rectal and myself met with staff from Urban Forestry Department and Community Services, Peter Gollinger and Darren Anderson. And we reviewed the recommendation of the guidelines for a relationship and did some cleanups and updates and passed that on to the directors of the appropriate departments, Public Works and Community Services. And Darren, please feel free to add anything if I get it wrong, but essentially after the directors approve it, this should become effective. So we're hopeful that this will happen before our January meeting.
Okay, thank you. Keith, anything to add?
No.
The only other thing I would add is that when the tree protection ordinance update goes back to City Council in April, along with that would be a recommended update to the Muni Code regarding the specific responsibilities of the Parks and Recreation Commission. So while it is that the guidance we're getting from the city attorney is there is leeway within the guidelines and the specified tasks for the commission that we can add this But given that, it would be better to make it more clear and formalize it, and the appropriate time to do that when council is taking action on related matters in April. Is that clear?
Okay, thank you. The Ventura plan. Keith?
Yeah, as Darren mentioned, it's going back to council first meeting in the January 10th, Monday, January 10th. And we'll see, staff is returning council. Council gave them guidance last time. And now we'll see what staff produces. And when that packet goes out, we should send an email and have people review it.
That would be great if we could know that. Yeah, good idea. Thank you. Okay, great. Regarding the youth council, obviously they continue to meet, and I'm hopeful, Darren, that they could come in maybe February or March, maybe March or April, to do a presentation to us about their activities.
Sounds great.
When I last talked to them, they felt like that would be something that they'd like to do. So if we can try to get that on the schedule, that would be great. Anything else that anybody wanted to add to our list?
Just one more comment about Coverley. The Coverley track has become extremely popular in this past couple of months. And there are groups that are running marathons and using the Coverley track as their number one training place. And over the past weekend, I think there were like 28 people running the track on a Saturday and another 25 on a Sunday. So it's very popular. And it's all because we put in a new track. So we just have to keep supporting it.
That's going to be kind of fun to do a sign or something online of all the people on the Coverley track who are making history and running marathons, and just continue to do a list. So I don't know if that's possible or not, Darren, or maybe some of the Friends of Coverley could do that, or the Friends of the Track, but it would be fun to celebrate the Palo Altans, especially, who are so accomplished.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great idea. I'm not familiar with the Friends of the Track, but
Well, we just are
It
going to
sounds
create a
good.
Friends of the Track.
Yeah, we're going to donate, and it would be nice to have a sign there that points people to the Friends of Palo Alto Parks to donate, because they're willing.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so let's move to the Foothill Nature Preserve Policy updates, and I guess go to Darren first for the staff report, and then hear from the ad hoc committee, whom I know has done a ton of work about this, and it's exciting to be discussing this. And when I think back to last year at this time, or before this time, where we were and all of the things that have worked out, I think very, very well. There's still lots to do, but boy, good work, the ad hoc committee.
Thank you, Chair. This is Darren Anderson with Community Services Department. The Foothills Nature Preserve Ad Hoc Committee has met numerous times for the past 8 months to review these Foothills Nature Preserve policies: visitor limit, infrastructure improvements, entrance fees, passes, reservation system, bicycle access at Gate D, Dogs and Foothills Nature Preserve Wildfire Safety, film and video policy. This last bullet point, the film and video policy, will be addressed in a separate agenda item this evening. That's because it pertains to more than just Foothills. It also pertains to all of open space and parks. I'm going to walk you through each of these and briefly discuss the recommendation from the ad hoc committee and a little bit of the thought process behind it. In the interest of time, I'm going to go very briefly into the background information on this general issue of Foothills and how we got here, just enough to give context. On November 2nd, 2020, City Council voted to open, at that time, Foothills Park, now Foothills Nature Preserve, to the general public by removing limits on non-residents, while maintaining the maximum capacity of 1,000 people at any one time. And the motion included a temporary 90-day limit of the capacity to 750 people at any one time. And council had directed the staff to work with the Parks and Recreation Commission to develop proposals for fees, capacity, park management, and environmental integrity studies. The Foothills Nature Preserve opened to the general public on December 17th, 2020, and staff began collecting vehicle entrance fees on weekends and holidays beginning Saturday, February 27th, 2021. On March 23rd, 2021, the PRC discussed several Foothills Nature Preserve policies and voted to recommend that council adopt several new vehicle entry fees and discounts for the preserve, including new fees for medium and large vehicles, buses, free entry on 6 specific days per year, free passes to be distributed at libraries, free entry for student field trips and all 4th grade students, and direct staff to permanently remove the 9 hillside barbecues at Foothills Nature Preserve. And then on May 10th, 2021, City Council approved this Park and Recreation Commission recommendation. Just a little bit on the visitation trends lately. This is a 4-year visitation comparison, with the red bars being 2021, the yellow 2020, blue in 2019, and green 2018. And it helps highlight the significant increase in visitation that's occurred since the preserve opened to the general public. This was in the staff report, so I'm not going to belabor this one. It's very involved, and you could sit and stare at it for a while and probably gather quite a bit of information. I'm going to try to highlight just the most salient aspects. And to me, this one helps a little bit. In 2021, at least for January through September, there were 264,057 visitors in 138,365 vehicles. In 2021's visitation is an increase of about 107% from the 3-year average. On December 17th, 2020, when the preserve first opened to the general public, the temporary visitor limit was 750 people at one time. And the high number of visitors and that 700-person limit resulted in traffic and parking challenges in the preserve. On February 22nd, 2021, City Council adopted an ordinance to authorize the city manager or designee to establish the capacity limit in Foothills in the range of 300 people to 650 people in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of preserve users and to protect the natural resources in the preserve, and/or due to the limits in parking facilities or staff availability. Staff have used 500 people at any one time as the visitor limit since that February date, and the preserve has not reached capacity since April 5th, 2021. Park rangers have observed that there hasn't been traffic or parking issues in the preserve while we've been at that 500-person limit. And the preserve, again, has not reached capacity since that Easter weekend on April 5th, 2021. The ad hoc recommends continuing that current practice of allowing 500 visitors at any one time and adjusting the visitor limit range from 400 to 600 people at any one time. And the rationale behind that is when the visitor limit was reduced to 500 at one time and the weekend entrance fee was implemented, the preserve visitation and capacity have been noticeably more manageable. Previously observed issues with visitors going off trail, increased traffic, and parking issues were greatly diminished. And the ad hoc noted that continuing to allow staff flexibility to make minor adjustments in the visitor limit would be helpful in addressing any unforeseen circumstances that may impact the preserve visitation. The ad hoc supports narrowing the visitor range because having fewer than 400 visitors at any one time is unnecessary to prevent traffic and parking problems. And a visitor limit of fewer than 400 also leads to frequent preserve closures due to reaching that capacity really quickly, especially during the summer. Having more than 600 visitors at any one time seems to contribute to problems with traffic and parking, especially in the more popular areas of the preserve. In January 2020, the city manager had assembled a stakeholder group, and we had representatives from grassroots ecology, Friends of Foothills Nature Preserve, the environmental volunteers, Stanford University, Jasper Ridge Biological Preserve, Los Altos Hills, and the chair and vice chair of the PRC to help identify and recommend improvements in the preserve. And this stakeholder group developed a list of infrastructure improvements aimed at protecting the habitat and improving visitor safety and visitor experience. And examples of the proposed improvements included the split rail fence to encourage visitors to stay on trail, a pedestrian pathway throughout the preserve to allow visitors to avoid walking on the roadway, and better defined parking spaces, additional crosswalks and speed bumps to improve pedestrian safety, and additional signage to help guide visitors. Here's a photo, two photos of what the split rail fence would look like. This is existing long-standing split rail that would go in various areas. And on the left, you can see our temporary measure. This was the very early iteration. Right when we observed problems, staff came out and put up this caution tape and barricades. These have since been replaced with rope and some wooden stakes, I believe. It's better, but not as efficient nor aesthetically pleasing as split rail would be, still temporary. And this is the pedestrian pathway area. You can see the shot of vehicles here lined up along the edge essentially force pedestrians to walk right down the middle of that road. And if we were able to put a pedestrian pathway, we'd stop all parking on the edge there and have a 5-foot wide pedestrian path for pedestrians to walk safely. The ad hoc recommends moving forward. Oh, I should note, forgive me. There currently isn't staff or funding available to document and complete that conceptual plan of improvements with cost estimates. Staff will submit a capital budget request to fund the development of the improvement plan in fiscal year 23 and construction of the improvements in fiscal year 24. And the ad hoc recommends moving forward with these infrastructure improvements as soon as funding is available and allocating capital budget towards the infrastructure improvements outlined by that stakeholder group, as well as ensuring that the PRC is involved in the review of those plans. While reduced visitation has lessened the immediate urgency, these improvements remain important for visitor safety and habitat protection. The ad hoc reviewed the current Foothills Nature Preserve entrance fees and various options for free or discounted entry. A little bit of background, there have been 11,436 paid entry fees since staff began collecting the fee on weekends and holidays, starting in February. And there have been 1,552 uses of the annual pass during weekends, during those weekends and holidays. There have been 1,036 instances of park entries where the fee is waived, accounting for 7.4% of all weekend and holiday entries. Staff anticipate implementing weekday fee collection via an automated machine starting in March 2022. The ad hoc recommends maintaining the existing daily fees, standard annual passes, free entry days, and free library entry passes, and free entry for pedestrians and bicycles. And the ad hoc recommends adapting the free entry policy for select groups to simplify the entrance station operations, facilitate entry fee enforcement on weekdays, and expand the list of permanent disabilities to be more inclusive. It's got these three elements: changing the existing active military and veteran free entry policy to a free annual pass for those active military and veterans, change the existing student driver entry policy to a 50% discount on the annual pass for students aged 16 to 24 and require that student to be present. And lastly, expand on the existing free entry policy for vehicles with disabled person placard or license plates to include free annual passes for people with permanent disabilities as defined by California State Parks. State Parks has a more diverse group of disabilities that they allow this discount for: developmental, hearing, speech, visual, mental, or physical disabilities. And these changes are aimed at simplifying the entrance station operations, reducing entrance queues, and ensuring that the entrance fees can be fairly enforced on weekdays, and making the disabled fee entry policy more inclusive of people with different disabilities. Just a real quick recap of the rationale. That active military and veteran fee, the existing policy for weekdays wouldn't work because there's no way for them to validate that they are without leaving their identification on the hood of their car. And we don't want to ask people to have to leave their personal information out like that. The student driver entry that currently exists The ad hoc wanted to note that they're very supportive and want to encourage youth and students to visit Foothills Nature Preserve. And just unfortunately, there are a few challenges with this existing free entry for student drivers. It's resulted in confusion for some park visitors. And in particular, the fact that the student needs to be driving the vehicle has been a frustration for many visitors. It's led to a number of arguments at the entrance station, which sometimes contributes to vehicles backing up and having to wait to get in. And the ad hoc is recommending that student driver fee be changed to that discount that we alluded to early, 16 to 24, and requiring that student to be present. An additional challenge with the free entry for students is that it will not be enforceable during the weekdays when the entrance station isn't staffed. So there would be no way to identify a student driver. And again, the ad hoc does want to support and encourage youth to visit the preserve. Regarding the vehicles with disabled person placards, the ad hoc recommends making that change to the annual pass, modeling on the state park model. And the ad hoc noted that the city's existing free entry for people with disabilities would be far more inclusive if it included these people with different types. And the ad hoc does recommend modeling off of the California State Park example, which requires an applicant to submit an application signed by a doctor in order to get the free annual pass. And these applications wouldn't not be processed at the preserve, but rather online or in person at Lucy Stern Community Center. The ad hoc committee looked at the recommendation system. We had discussed that very early on when the preserve was really inundated with high visitation numbers upon first opening. And while visitation at the preserve is approximately 107% higher than historical average, the preserve hasn't reached capacity since April. And the reservation system would be complex to implement and likely unnecessarily limit the total number of people who are able to visit the preserve. If a visitation increases in the future to the point that the preserve frequently reaches capacity, a reservation system can be reconsidered. So the recommendation from the ad hoc is not recommending pursuing a reservation system at this time. Bicycle access at Gate D. In August 2021, the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee, Payback, voted to request that Transportation Department staff work with the Parks and Recreation Commission to allow bicycle riders to enter Foothills Preserve from the Aerate Preserve through Gate D. In 2005, City Council had designated a pedestrian trail through Foothills Preserve to connect Pearson Aerate Preserve with the adjoining Los Trancos Open Space Preserve in exchange for grant funding. Palo Alto Municipal Code was amended to allow general access through these two preserves at these designated points for the sake of using the bay to Foothills trails within Foothills Nature Preserve. And these entry points through an existing gate, Gate D, into the Pearson Aerate, and through the existing pathway, Gate Z, into Los Trancos. This was for pedestrians only and not persons with horses or bicycles. On September 21, 2021, the ad hoc committee met with Payback representatives to discuss bicycle access through Gate D. And the feedback from Payback and the ad hoc from that meeting is noted in the staff report. I won't go through all the details here. The ad hoc doesn't have a unanimous recommendation on whether to open Gate D to bicycle access, and the ad hoc noted these benefits to opening Gate D. It would increase connections between open space preserves, increase recreational opportunities, and provide an additional safe route for bicycle access, allowing them to avoid Page Mill Road. However, the ad hoc is concerned about some potential impacts. Bikes going the wrong way.
Darren, you're going back, go back a slide.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Bikes going the wrong way down a narrow one-way road, an increase in illegal use of bikes on trails, impacts to already limited staff resources to monitor and enforce issues, and a challenge in reversing course if we did pilot such a program and the gate of opening the gate and it was unsuccessful. The ad hoc reviewed the city's dog policies in Foothills Nature Preserve and found that the existing municipal code for leash requirements, that is that dogs must be leashed and under physical control at all times while in the preserve, and the exclusion of dogs from the preserve on weekends and holidays are appropriate. The ad hoc noted that the current rules for toll camp don't require dogs to stay confined to the campsite at night. And the ad hoc and staff researched what other agencies have for policies for dogs in campsites. California state parks, dogs cannot be left unattended, and overnight campers must keep their dogs in a tent. Santa Clara County parks require dogs to be confined to tents or vehicles at night. And San Mateo County parks does not allow dogs in their campground. The ad hoc recommendation is that the rules for the dogs staying in tool camp should be updated to state when the preserve is closed, dogs must be confined to campsites and must be in a tent unless otherwise supervised and accompanied at night. At City Council study session on Foothills fire mitigation strategies on August 30th, 2021, staff discussed a fire safety survey that was recently done at Foothills Nature Preserve and Pearson-Rasadero Preserve, and it highlighted the following observations. The general feedback was that the status of this year's wildfire prevention work and what was still visible from previous year's work appears highly effective. There were several eucalyptus trees that should be pruned or removed. And there was support for the closure of the campfire circles at Toll Camp for the remainder of the camping season. They also noted that the campfire circles and the barbecues at Foothills Nature Preserve were well maintained and low fire risk. There were several comments from City Council regarding these issues and a request to return to Council with options. A date has not been set for when this topic will be brought back to City Council. Just a little bit of the backstory on these kind of three issues of eucalyptus trees, campfires, and barbecues. Staff did some analysis. There are 65 approximately eucalyptus trees in Foothills and Rasadero, and 41 that appear to be on Stanford property adjacent to Pearson-Rasadero Preserve. The removal of the eucalyptus trees, the required biological surveys, the native plant replanting mitigation would cost somewhere around $350,000. The campfires, we've got 2 campfire circles at Toll Camp. They're typically open with a permit during camping season, May 1st through October 31st, and prohibited on red flag warning days. No campfire permits were granted this year because of last year's severe fire season. The campfire circles could be removed to further reduce the risk in Foothills Nature Preserve. And if City Council directs staff to remove that, the circles that could be accomplished with existing staff resources. The barbecues in Foothills Nature Preserve are typically open all year round, except on red flag days. And while there are signs at each barbecue informing people not to move ashes, there have been issues with people putting hot coals from the barbecues into dumpsters and causing dumpster fires. There've also been observations of park visitors walking away from barbecues and leaving them unattended. And staff maintain a minimum of 10 feet vegetation clearance around the barbecues and barbecue circles. The ad hoc is concerned about fire safety, and the issues that were highlighted on that August 30th council study session related to eucalyptus trees, campfires, and barbecues. An additional concern is the limited resources available to monitor campfires and barbecues. The ad hoc recommends that Palo Alto Fire Department provide guidance on actions to mitigate the wildfire safety concerns. And the next steps, should we make a action tonight, make a recommendation to council? That recommendation will be brought, I believe, in February. And Chair, that concludes the staff presentation.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that, Darren. Let's go to the ad hoc now for comment. And then Lam, so I can think about it, are there members of the public who wish to speak on this particular topic?
Yes, sir. At present, we have 4 hands.
Okay. So shall we do that first?
That makes sense to me, Chair.
Yeah, it makes sense to me too. Thank you. So let's do that, Lam.
Yes. So our first speaker will be Paul Goldstein, to be followed by Cedric, and I'll apologize if I mispronounced your last name, Cedric De La Bojardiere, to be followed by Shani Kleinhaus, and to be followed by Robert Neff. Paul, if you give me one moment here, then you can begin speaking. Paul, if you would unmute, you may begin.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, Joe, we can hear you.
Okay. I have been a Palo Alto resident for over 50 years, and I've always loved Foothills Park. For the last several years, I've been hiking the trails in the park twice a week on weekdays. I support the plan to charge weekday admission to the park. In fact, I have purchased my annual pass and I have not had an occasion to use it, in spite of the fact that I've been visiting the park twice a week. I urge you to eliminate the bicycle prohibition for Gate D. I should mention I'm a member of the Palo Alto Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and that we met with your ad hoc group. The current prohibition makes no sense since bicycles are permitted on the approaches of both sides. The prohibition is a relic of the time when Foothills was open to Palo Alto residents only, and the gate was made accessible to hikers on the Bay to Ridge Trail as a condition of grant money. The only arguments I've heard for maintaining the prohibition are that some bicyclists do illegal, destructive, and dangerous things. I would suggest that these same people probably ignore the current signage. Allowing and encouraging law-abiding bicyclists in the park aligns with Palo Alto policy to encourage bicycling and will create a more respectful community environment. Opening Gate D will allow ride leaders of our local bicycle clubs to plan outings that include Foothills Park. They will teach respect for the beauty and natural benefits that this valuable resource provides. So I urge you to open it and to amend the municipal code to allow bicycles through that gate. Thank you.
Chair, our next speaker is Cedric De La Bojardiere. And
Thank you.
Cedric,
Hello.
Cedric, if you unmute, you can begin.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Cedric De La Bojardiere. I'm also a lifetime resident of Palo Alto, and I've always loved Foothill Park. I even got married there. I also support opening Gate D to bicyclists. I've done that ride through a Rastgero to that Gate D. It is pretty grueling. I'm an experienced cyclist. I bike all my life and I bike everywhere I go almost. It is pretty brutal to get up there. If you've made it that far, you are incentivized to go to the top, go to the peak, check out the view. I think that a lot of your, it's just a little bit further to get there to the peak. A lot of your concerns seems against opening the gate center around safety concerns. But if that's the case, I think you should consider that the opening the gate provides cyclists with a much safer way to get to Foothill Park. They can avoid 2.5 miles of dangerous riding on narrow Page Mill Road. I think with proper signage that it's a one-way road, don't ride against traffic, and proper signage of don't ride on the trails, then you can regulate the behavior you don't want while permitting people who will respect the law to use that facility. I think like I said, the logic of saying, oh, we don't want people to do dangerous things, it doesn't make sense, because it's much safer to be coming in that way than driving on the road, which I've done also. So please open the gate to bicycle traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Cedric. Our next speaker is Shani Kleinhaus. Shani, if you would unmute, you may begin.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I want to thank the ad hoc committee and look forward to joining you next month. My comments today focus on bikes and dogs access. Since COVID started, I visit Foothills Park at least once a week during the weekdays because I have a dog, and often visit Arastradero as well. And I appreciate the recommendation to continue allowing dogs during weekdays to come and hike in Foothills Park. On the bikes, I'm more concerned. There are evidence of damage to trails and habitat in Arastradero Preserve. Those of you who have seen those exercise areas, it's pretty amazing. And we have no enforcement. And I see the beginning of damage in Foothills trails. And so regulation must have enforcement. And if we can't have enforcement, maybe we can't have bikes there. And I want to say also that one of the biggest controversies right now is what to do about electronic bikes and other hovercrafts and all sorts of other types of electronic mobility aids. And the studies that have been done on the impacts of such electronic bikes on bats and on birds show severe impacts, primarily because the sound that comes out of those bikes, the noise that is generated is not audible to people, but it is audible to bats and birds, and the disturbance to maternity routes showed to reduce survivorship of the young bats and abandonment by the adults. So, we need to look very carefully on the issue of any kind of bikes, and especially electronic bikes and similar vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Shani. Our next speaker is Robert Neff. Robert, if you could unmute, please.
Good evening, Parks and Recreation Commissioners and Palo Alto staff. As a longtime Palo Alto bicyclist and a mountain biker just since the start of COVID, I'm here to request that you legalize bicycle passage between Arastradero Preserve and Foothills Preserve through Gate D. As the staff report makes clear, there's no intrinsic reason for this gate to be closed to bicyclists anymore. All bicyclists are currently allowed on both the trail on the Arastradero side and the road on the Foothills side. Opening this connection will be a recreational benefit for bicyclists seeking to connect from Arastradero Preserve to Vista Hill in Foothills Preserve, and it would add a beneficial connection between Los Altos Hills, the Palo Alto Preserves, Portola Valley, and the Palo Alto Flatlands. Several objections to this action described in the staff report amounted to describing visiting bicyclists as rogue actors who do not follow rules. I've learned from my work on Payback, our Bicycle Ped Advisory Committee, that sometimes you get the users you deserve, whether motorists, pedestrians, or bicyclists. Currently, Foothills Preserve may be getting the visitor behavior it deserves from the environment created by its own rules. Certainly, a bicyclist who currently enters the preserve using this gate or the fire road from Alexis Drive breaks the rules just on entry. Riders may further seek to avoid detection and conflict with rangers by continuing off-road on the single-track panoramic trail or downhill on the Vista Hill Road, avoiding passage past the park offices at the bottom of the hill. If instead the preserve made access align with common sense through a gate with legal passage on both sides, and perhaps a legal fire road connection to Alexis Drive, I think you would encourage rule-abiding behavior and see fewer issues in the park. Mountain bicyclists have learned that riding on the fire roads is generally allowed and riding on single-track trails is generally not. Over 30+ years of collective experience in the San Francisco Bay Area and all over the world. So I urge you to take up this issue to remove the restriction on bicycle passage between the preserves and welcome rule-abiding bicyclists and better bicyclist behavior that this change will encourage. And I want to thank you for your service to Palo Alto and the greater community. I've been very impressed by the involvement and energy shown by this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Chair, that concludes a request for public speakers.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to the public for speaking. Let's go now to the ad hoc committee for comment.
Thank you, Chair. Before we dive in, I'd like to suggest the format that we go through the items rather than having the ad hoc committee members speak to all of the 6 or 7 items that we've talked about. I think it'd be more efficient if we talked about them one at a time and get group resolution on what we'd be considering as a motion for a given item and then moving on, if that's amenable to the chair and the commission.
Yeah, I think that works. What about your fellow ad hoc members? Are they good with that?
That's okay. That's okay with me. I just want to make a general comment, and that is that this took 8 months
Mhm.
and a lot of meetings towards the very end, trying to get something before the end of the year. So as we go through these things, if you have any questions, we've probably dealt with it, and please ask, and we'll try to clarify what we've been going through. So go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, what about Keith? Any comment?
Yeah, no, I agree with Jeff. We should take this piecemeal. One big bite we're gonna choke on it.
Of course. And Darren, do we happen to have a slide that shows the different pieces?
I do. Yes, I can share that right now.
Great.
So Chair, this is the draft motion in a Word document that we can edit. If this isn't quite what you're wanting, I can try something else, but this is basically everything in our recommendation.
No, let's leave this up and then have the members of the ad hoc speak to the parts. Okay? Jeff, are you fine? Are you okay with doing it that way?
Jeff?
I'm sorry.
Jeff, are you there?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, this looks great. And before we move forward, I want to thank Darren and other staff members for helping us move along on this. This has been a long,
Yes.
detailed effort, and we certainly couldn't get anywhere with it without staff's expert guidance and input along the way. Just first off on the visitor limit, I think for me, it's pretty straightforward. What we've been doing is working with a number of 500. The recommendation we're making isn't really suggesting that we want to go with a number other than 500. We're just allowing flexibility in the event of unforeseen circumstances.
And the fact that we have not reached capacity since Easter, and also that we added fees makes this a correct, a proper level, I think.
And my first inclination would be to have a lower limit that was below 400, just to give them more flexibility to protect the park. The point against that is that when you bring it that low, then you may be closing it and opening it multiple times, and now you may be putting much more traffic problems on Page Mill. So I think keeping the minimum at 400, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure 400 would actually work, but we have the flexibility to try it if needed.
Okay, so it sounds like the ad hoc obviously is comfortable with this. What about other commissioners and staff?
I have a quick question, Chair.
Yes.
What sort of feedback or studies did we get with trail use and wildlife and habitat and so forth with the number of visitors we've had overall continuously, as opposed to we used to have certain periods that were much higher than others or certain times, and now we're having more, it seems a more stable visitation. Do we have any data or feedback or anecdotal evidence or anything with what the visitation is doing to the park?
Darren, look for you to answer that, but maybe you could pop up the slide that has the visitation numbers, the graph, just for reference here.
Yeah, let me do two things. Let me share a different slide. of things we saw early on. This is a slide you've seen before
Mhm.
on environmental impacts, and it was widening essentially. And this is monitoring work done by grassroots ecology. And the widening was happening to the people stepping off trail for passing, essentially because there were so many people on the trails. And as I guess, in addition to COVID playing a role, and it damaged some of the adjacent vegetation. It really was limited just to narrow sections. And you can see spots like these are seen along certain trails, but no special habitat has been impacted. This seems to have abated lately. There's less and less of this. The numbers have sort of become more manageable. Another example where we had in January 2021, the start of these illegal trails, man-made trails cruising around into natural areas, and with some signage, it grew back in. So that is an area where the numbers have not impacted the natural area because of either good education, or in some places we put in barrier like the rope and fence. The other one that they're tracking was invasive species to see if increased numbers were dragging invasive species into areas they weren't. And grassroots said they're going to continue to monitor, but they have not seen anything yet. And then it's probably too early yet to see if that has happened. There was a question about, can we look at the visitation trends? Vice Chair, did you want to see this one?
Yes, thanks.
I mean, one thing that I note is that after COVID, when it was still just Palo Alto residents, you can see those yellow bars really skyrocket. And so the yellow bars are Palo Alto residents except for December. And that's pretty impressive by itself.
Mhm.
And the fact that June and July of 2020, there were more visitors than there were this summer, even as COVID was reduced. So adding the fees may have played a role in reducing the number of people and therefore the impact. So it actually might be, in this case, better than it was.
Did I answer your question, Commissioner Lemire?
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, but this is one of the things that still bothers me is that we don't have any baseline. That was part of the plan, was we're gonna have a baseline so we could have some type of measure, some way of measuring the impact to both wildlife and to habitat. And we don't have that, so we can do some spot checks here and there, but we really don't have a good answer to Jeff's question.
Mandy, do you have any comments?
No comments, and thank the ad hoc for the recommendation. I think there was a lot of moving pieces at that point with the visitor limit, the fee, and the other things going on. And so it was a bit of an educated guess. And I'm glad to see that it was more on the educated, less on the guess. And so I appreciate the modifications proposed.
Okay, well then it sounds to me like without any other comment that number one seems to have the agreement of the commission. If not, or if anybody has a question, let's speak up now. Okay, so Darren, we'll let number one stand for now and move on to number two.
Sounds good.
Okay, comments from the ad hoc on number two.
As you know, we've made a number of infrastructure improvements already, as Darren mentioned, like signage and things like that. But there are definitely more that we should do to prevent longer term damage. And the only issue was the budget, and we'll get into that. The fact that they're really, the additional improvements can't be made for another year. So I strongly believe that this needs to be prioritized and work begun as soon as possible to prevent any more damage. And we just, well, it'll take a year.
Okay, other comments from the ad hoc?
No.
Comments from the commissioners?
Sorry, I just have a quick comment. I am concerned that and troubled by the dates, how far the infrastructure improvements are being pushed out. So what's being proposed, or what's currently in play, is FY23 is when the improvement plans would be developed, and the actual construction wouldn't occur until FY24. And Darren, am I correct that FY24 starts on July 1st of 2024?
Of July 21st of 2023.
2023. Okay, so that's better then.
And what's the round number for this work?
I don't have a great estimate.
Okay.
You'll see in the capital discussion that we've put a number on it to best guess it, and I don't have that handy. Lom, do you happen to know what we put on there?
I'm looking at 75,000 for Foothill Nature Preserve improvements, but that seems pretty low.
Yeah, that
must be
not the figure.
planning.
This is in the 100,000 plus.
Yeah, here's 400,000, another 100,000, another 3. Yeah, okay. So would the commission want to add something about our concern that we're pushing it off, or is that not appropriate here? When we go to put together a motion.
Did say prioritize. And
I think maybe it's okay for this motion, and maybe
okay,
if it's something we want to pursue further, we talk about it during the CIP item.
exactly. And
Does that make sense, Darren?
Yes, that works for me. Only thing I might add is, in addition to the challenge of just the funding, it's also a staff capacity. Even if we had the funding now to implement and make the plan happen and to make the construction happen, is sometimes more challenging because of staff resources than it is funding. So I think what we're proposing is realistic, that we can make that happen. And if we try to expedite it any faster, I'm questioning whether it would really happen.
And
I appreciate that. I'm voicing my concern.
Fair.
lastly, if an infrastructure improvement is essential for safety or for mitigating damage, you can make a change and pull something up into regular maintenance, right, Darren? If there's an emergency.
Yes.
I would just add, in that same vein, the caution tape and the sign, the sort of smaller items, while they may not be permanent fixes, I would just empower staff to continue to look for those opportunities, because they've been successful, and we've seen it before and after. So continue to keep the good work.
Will do. Thank you, Commissioner Brown.
Okay, are there other comments about the capital budget and the prioritizing? Seems like there's agreement there as well, and concern that it's going to take a little bit longer, both on the part of the staff and part of the commission, Darren. Would that be fair to say? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess my only concern is prioritize seems a little vague.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to add more specifics on that? Or do we want it vague? Darren, do you have any suggestions?
CSD is already moving this as a proposed budget for the nearest term we can, which is the FY23 year. So I feel like we're sort of taking a little bit of an action on this already in terms of its proposal. I think this would strengthen it by having the PRC say, we agree that this is important and we think it should happen as soon as possible. So I personally am okay with the language.
Well, I think there is agreement on the PRC, Darren, so I think can we add that in?
Well, I think this will be.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, okay. So let's move to number 3 then regarding the fees.
Sorry, Chair, before we move on, as far as the wording of the motion, do we want to get rid of the noted below
Oh, yes.
parenthetical note?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, now can we go on to number 3, the fees and comments from the ad hoc?
I think the big thing here is avoiding conflicts at the kiosk and a smooth flow in and into and out of the park. And our efforts were to try to do that in a number of different areas. So that was the main impetus for doing this, and I think it should work.
I'd add just briefly that while item 3 isn't a change action, the ad hoc felt it was appropriate to specifically call out things that we like as they are, to note it specifically in a motion that goes directly to City Council. So there's no lack of clarity.
Well,
Yeah,
I
my
agree
comment
with
would-
that, Jeff, especially because I remember that when we were thinking first about reporting back to council, that we wanted to reserve the ability to look at whether the fees should be removed or lowered. So it's good to include that. Was there any thought to talk about at some point in the future, another review of fees from the ad hoc?
It's not something that was specifically brought up in the ad hoc. It seems like a best practice that it's something that the commission could review on a periodic basis. I don't know if we're talking about
Okay, I just wondered.
3-year or 5-year basis, but I would leave that to the staff to bring up an appropriate time.
And we did note that there are a number of ways that people can get in, and that the number of people didn't drop off precipitously because the cost was too great, or that we didn't have these other options or annual passes. So we felt that it was working.
Good. Okay, other additional comments about number 3? Can we say there's agreement to support that as it is? No, yes? I can only see David, so. Okay, let's move on then to number 4.
Yeah, my comment above was really about number 4. These are additional things that we wanted to do to simplify the entrance process. And I think we've fairly dealt with some of the stickiest issues, especially ones that have been brought up by the city council.
Yeah, these all things will help the flow, and they also will help the weekday process. So I think I support all these.
Good.
And the major factor that hasn't come into play yet that will impact what we're trying to make changes on is the weekday fee collection. And while it hasn't been instituted yet, and so we don't have feedback on that, in some ways we're fortunate because as we've outlined, the existing free entry policy to select groups would make enforcement of weekday fees really impossible for staff.
Any other commissioner comments besides the ad hoc?
I'd just add that I'd be interested in hearing a report out either from the ad hoc or in a department report on how that change goes in the future and during the weekday especially. And for any folks on the call that may visit the park on the weekday, how that goes for you in the future.
Did you want to put a time frame on it, Mandy?
No, it's just sort of it's just a future comment for the ad hoc to consider. Suggestion.
Okay, good.
Now note that the change to the weekday fees is not until around March. So we're talking, you're going to get a report back probably June, something like that.
Right, and so in the likely event that we choose to form a Foothills Nature Preserve ad hoc next year, we'll have to come up with a specific goal and an area of direction for the ad hoc, and monitoring the weekday entry fee collection would be an obvious one to include, because we shouldn't have just a standing ad hoc.
Right. Okay, well, it sounds like there's an agreement on that one. That would be number 4. The reservation system. Comments from the ad hoc?
The big driver of this was closures on weekends in the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Because that hasn't happened since Easter, all through the Memorial Day weekend, July 4th weekend, we felt that it was not appropriate to go to this level of complexity at this time.
Has there been any other research done with other parks who do have a reservation system? I remember we talked about that in the past, but anything new that you've uncovered, Darren?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Chair. We researched with other agencies, and I think we had extensive dialogue with one particular park in Santa Clara County who had recently implemented one primarily for the same reasons we had, the spike in visitation due to COVID. And they had shared with us a little bit of how it was working. And then as our problems seemed to abate, the less we continued those conversations. So I don't have anything new beyond what I had shared many, many months ago on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think we felt there's limited benefit to pursuing a reservation system and lots of potential problems with a reservation system in terms of how to set up a ticketed time where someone has to enter at a certain time and exit at a certain time. It just didn't feel practical or realistic for the preserve, given the nature of the visitor experience and also the staffing that's available for enforcement.
Okay. Sounds like everybody agrees with that. Any other comments at this point, or we'll move on to the dogs? Okay, dog policy.
This was precipitated by an article in the Palo Alto Weekly by a reporter who brought their dog to Foothills camping middle of the week and decided to take a jog with the dog throughout the park after dark, after the park is closed. And that sort of made us think that this is not appropriate because the trails are really for wildlife after the park closes.
Other comments from the ad hoc? Makes sense to me. Any commissioners? Okay. One seems okay. And finally, the fire department direction about wildfire safety?
We had a lot of discussion about this, that some things have already been done. And we wanted to make sure we didn't feel confident in our expertise to be able to make significant recommendations above and beyond what's already been done, because without the help of the experts. And so we felt that we've done a number of things already, and anything additional, and we've already heard from several groups, several experts, that it seems to be okay, quote unquote, seems to be okay, but we felt totally inadequate in being able to make additional recommendations. So that's it.
Sorry, I was on mute. Any additional comments, Jeff or Keith?
We've identified concerns, and City Council is already working with fire department staff. And Darren, you can clarify that they're expecting a recommendation. And so we also felt like if we make a recommendation that's potentially different from what the fire department is going to recommend, and they're not meeting with us, then it's providing unstraightforward guidance, and we're deferring to the expertise essentially of the fire department.
I concur with that, Vice Chair. That I shared that concern that we might get ahead of the experts, so to speak, for this one. I'd feel more comfortable with the fire department providing the specific details the council may want beyond what they already have.
I think our role as a commission was really to say, do we want campfires at all? And what would the park be like? What would the camping experience be like without campfires at all? And the same thing goes for barbecues. If we said no more barbecues anywhere in the park ever, would that be good? And I'll bet that there are people in the city who would say absolutely no barbecues, absolutely no campfires. It's too dangerous. And we didn't want to go that far. The ad hoc didn't want to go that far. Does the commission want to go that far? The rest of the commission?
Thoughts from other commissioners on David's question? Okay,
I understand not wanting to get ahead of the experts, but I do have great concern for fire safety, and with how we're looking at the area as a preserve. And, I'm just not sure of the necessity of barbecues and fires, especially up there, and where things are going with
any other comments?
And I'm willing to entertain campfires separate from barbecues.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has feelings about campfires versus barbecues, that's the question.
I mean, my first instinct was to have the same concern that Jeff did, is that, do we really want to be taking these chances? A fire department wasn't concerned about these chances, and are they being callous, or they just have better information than I do? I'm not sure, but I that's why I suspect we are best off recommending that the fire department address this.
Mm-hmm.
At this time. That doesn't mean that this isn't an area that we can comment on in the future. if the resolution and recommendation from the fire department to city council is not something that the commission is comfortable with in the near term or midterm, then it's something that is always there for us to revisit, is my thought.
One more comment, and that is that there are rules for campers that are already in place. You can't have a bonfire, for instance, and what Darren mentioned earlier about moving your coals in the barbecues and leaving your barbecues unattended. Those rules already exist. And so this is above and beyond those rules. And I think that's why the fire department has said that it's in the past that it's not as big a risk as we think, and you know, red flag days and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's where we were.
In the ad hoc, we had a big discussion about, do we want to say the word defer in here, defer to the fire department expertise? And we took that out because we didn't want to make it sound too passive. We wanted to push the fire department to make a recommendation, and we just don't want to sit on the sidelines. We do want them to take action and address our concerns.
Would you want it to then say, make a recommendation within a certain time frame? And then the commission would review this again? I mean, I like the fact that we can learn from the fire department, but then make our own recommendation, because I'm, like Commissioner Lemaire, concerned with the fire danger.
Well, that sounds appealing. I don't think it's our place to direct the fire department on a
Not
time
direct
frame.
the fire.
Well, but how do we specify a time frame without us directing them?
Do you want to say request that the fire department recommend actions, blah, 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 before the fire season starts in April or in May?
Well, I like that. Does that work for other people? Jeff, do you feel like that's too much directing?
I do. I think it's. I'd be interested in staff's input on this. It feels like we're stepping a little bit outside our lane in this case, and I believe that City Council is already requesting an update from the fire department on this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thanks for that, Vice Chair. I concur. They have directed staff to come back on this. The CMR, or City Manager's Staff Report, has been generated. We just haven't got the date. So I feel confident that this will go to council in the near term. And I'm less comfortable going beyond requesting that the fire department provide this recommended actions.
Okay, well, that's good information. So our role tonight is to discuss the recommendations and then decide if we all agree with these recommendations that we've just gone through, and then make a motion and pass it or not to go on to the council. Is that correct, Darren?
That is, Chair. With one little piece is the Gate D discussion. The ad hoc didn't come to agreement, but I think that would be a good one for us to dive into and see if the commission can come up with a recommendation.
Definitely agree that we should. This is an item that's not straightforward that we should discuss as a full commission.
Yes, I think that's true. So let's can we open the discussion now on Gate D?
Darren, can you bring up the portion below where it shows the pros and cons?
Yeah, page 8 of the staff, starting on page 8 of the staff report. On the top of page 9.
Bear with me just a second. I'm going to open up a different page and open the staff report. You can look at that.
What's at stake here is whether or not we add something to the motion regarding Gate D.
Gate D, yeah.
I think we should add something to the motion, whether it's no change or recommending a change, but I think it's important and appropriate that we've reviewed this and that we are making a formal comment on this.
This is on page 9 of the staff report.
Yeah, the recommendation of the top 9.
Yeah.
For the pros and cons. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Right there.
right there.
Okay, Darren or the ad hoc, do you want to take us through that again?
I can start.
Okay.
I definitely believe in the benefits that are listed there. The connections between open space preserves is something I've wanted to do the whole time that I'm on the commission, any chance I get. Increased recreational opportunities, yeah, but also the safe route up to the park is also something that is definitely worthwhile. The big problem are the potential impacts, and the speakers earlier today mentioned ways to mitigate those potential impacts, and we can add to this electric bikes, which allow more people to go up there and faster. And throughout my time on the commission, I've always deferred to staff. And that number 3 bullet, impacts to already limited staff resources to monitor and enforce issues, especially involving the top 2, the illegal use of bikes on trails and the bike going the wrong way, is a real concern for staff. And do I want to go against staff and say, you know, deal with it or not? Because I believe so firmly in increasing those connections and those other benefits. That's really been the entire discussion that we've had since September when we met with Payback. Is it enough to overcome these potential impacts? That's the question for the commission.
Thank you, David. That's very helpful. Others from the ad hoc?
Yeah, and if you read the staff report, I do overall think that we should be opening gate D. And I appreciate that there are risks to opening gate D, but to me, the reason I support it is that I think the upside is more compelling than the downside. Right now, in particular, I think the current rules is just penalizing people who follow the rules. The people who don't follow the rules are already going through that gate and they're already in Foothills Park or in Foothills Preserve. So I think that right now we're not penalizing the right people. And if you look at the upsides, those are all, I think, legitimate upsides. Your connections between open space preserves, like David mentioned, that's really a high priority. And we also are getting people off Page Mill, and that's just not good for bicyclists. But there are potential downsides. But I don't think we have any hard data that says that those bad things are going to happen. We're just scared that they're going to. So I really don't want to make work for staff. I appreciate that Darren and his staff do work hard and they are stretched very thin. And I don't want to have any damage to the preserve. I really think that most likely this is not going to be a big deal and that we are penalizing people who shouldn't be penalized right now.
Thank you, Keith. Good points. Jeff?
Yes, thank you. The ad hoc was fairly unanimous in our feeling, and that increasing the connections and adding the safe route are absolutely positives that we support, and reasonable and important changes to make for our bicycling community. With that said, on balance, for me, I feel like the timing just isn't right to be pursuing this, given that we've already outlined a range of infrastructure improvements that we want to make to the preserve, and those are being pushed out into the next 2 fiscal years to plan and then do the construction of these improvements. There will be infrastructure improvements required for this as well. If you go to Gate D, and I hike by there frequently, when I go there, I just look at this and say, okay, someone's come up here in a bike, they're coming in through Arastadero Preserve, and at that point, there's a trail, there's a steep road that goes up to Vista Point, and that goes back down to the interpretive center. And at the same point, there's also a dirt trail that goes laterally in either direction. And it just feels like it's going to take some time and some staff resources if we were to open this up to get people to be doing the right thing. I don't think it's realistic to expect that opening up this gate would not increase bicycle traffic on the dirt trails. As we've heard, as someone mentioned earlier this evening, there is an expectation of bicyclists that bikes are permitted on fire roads, if not on trails. And in Foothills Nature Preserve, their bikes are not permitted on the fire roads, and that's not something that's being considered for change at this point. So that's going to be further confusion and further education, and ultimately there is no enforcement available at Foothills Nature Preserve right now. And so for me, it's just kind of overwhelming the impact on staff in terms of the resources that would be needed to change the infrastructure, to change and guide and monitor the behavior, and also the fact that there is no enforcement available. There is no extra resource pool. In the last year and a half, there's been a much larger percentage of open space resources that have been dedicated to Foothills Nature Preserve at the expense of our other open space preserves because of the changes that have happened at Foothills. And this is just kind of exacerbating this in my opinion, before staff's had an opportunity to fully catch their breath and catch up and get things back under control. It's something I think once we're able to get the other infrastructure improvements in place, then this is something that I think would be appropriate to have another discussion on. But for me, the timing's not right at this time.
Okay, thank you. Other commissioners' comments? Jeff Lemire?
No, I don't have any comments on this. I don't feel like Gate D in that path, the one-way path. Although I am in favor of connections and access.
And Mandy?
I agree with the comments regarding access and opportunities. However, just like we recommend to the fire department on their expertise, we also take the recommendations from Parks and Recreation and Community Services staff and rangers on what they feel is best and what they feel is feasible. So I think it would be important to listen to their recommendation based on resources available currently. I do have some thoughts to consider moving forward, to potentially identify opportunities, and if there were staff available in the future to do targeted enforcement during a busy bike season rather than year round. I think once you really sort of get good practices in place, it's going to be people that are coming back and they'll get in the same habit, they'll spread the word. Another opportunity is to offer individual days or guided rides on that path to allow the opportunity so that people can sign up and they get the hang of it and they know what to do before we end up doing any sort of next steps. So those are just some thoughts to consider.
Well, those are great ideas, Mandy, and I want to make sure we don't lose sight of those.
Chair, those
Yes.
are excellent suggestions from Mandy. And the only other one I want to make is that this is really the responsibility of the city council, that we ought to make a recommendation that if there was more resources, and budget issue is the big one, and if we could put some of those infrastructure changes in sooner, so to try to put signs, one-way signs and split rail fences to keep bikes out of some trails, then it's their responsibility to help us get there. And that we would like to get there, as Jeff said, we would like to get there at some point, but there are certain very real issues with timing and with resources. And we've talked with Payback about, well, what about self-policing so that the staff doesn't have to do that. So on a busy Saturday morning or a busy Sunday morning, can there be people to help us monitor? And there was not very much desire on their part to do that. And that's why I think Mandy's suggestion of guided rides and individual days where there could be somebody there to monitor it is an excellent suggestion.
Okay, Darren.
One more thing I'd like to add real quickly is the subject of e-bikes. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's great that e-bikes will provide a broader swath of the population access where they wouldn't normally be able to access the areas on a bicycle, but it's also going to increase ridership and potentially raises environmental concerns. I think it would be appropriate for the commission to be considering an overall e-bike policy for the city. It's a complicated undertaking, but I think that might be something else that would be appropriate to have some consideration towards before opening up Gate D as well. And finally, as we've been kind of alluding to staff's recommendation on this, but I think it would be appropriate to hear directly from Darren, his input on this.
Oh, I was waiting for you to finish your comment so I could ask Darren for his thoughts. Darren?
Thanks, Chair and Vice Chair, and all the commission's good thoughts on this challenging and difficult policy. I do have concerns, and in talking to the rangers who'd be the ones ultimately enforcing issues or responding to complaints if there were some. And I think one commissioner must have said, we have no assurances that there would be problems. And I think that's true. I don't claim that I know for sure there'd be issues. My hunch is that this would most certainly bring more bikes into Foothills Nature Preserve. And typically when you have more of anything, there's a small percentage of whatever that anything is that has that causes some sort of problem. And I think there'd be a small percentage of bikes that are new to the preserve that end up going off trail and exacerbating that condition or issue that we have right now that we really struggle with enforcing. I also worry a little bit about, it's natural for making a change like this to say, we want you to monitor this now and let us know how it's working. We don't have staff to monitor this and see how it's working or do the additional enforcement. I think that would be really difficult. It is true. I think it's possible that there wouldn't be an issue. I just am a little nervous and a little worried about it. I'm not totally convinced that the infrastructure improvements would make it less likely for this increase in bikes to go off trail. I don't really see how that would be. I think I don't see that making a difference, frankly. Although it would make it safer for pedestrians. When we have more bikes on there, having a place for pedestrians to get off the road that they would otherwise be sharing with bikes and cars, I can see a benefit for that for sure. So I don't know if I've got anything more I could share on that than what I've shared. And I think I could definitely see both sides of the argument here. There's a lot of pros to opening that up, and it would frankly make some things a little easier because the rangers are always dealing with people complaining. I just think with this change, there would be new problems.
Okay, thank you for Darren for that. I like to kind of move us along, but I'd like to make a comment if I could, listening to both sides. And certainly we all want to increase the connections between open space preserves and have more recreational opportunities and all of that. But when we started out this staff report, we noted that November 20th of last year was when we opened Foothill Park. And it's only been a year and a month. And during that time, the staff and the commission, but the staff has really addressed a lot of issues that have come out because we did open the park to everybody. And from my perspective, that was the right thing to do. But I would like to see us keep Gate D closed for now, and note the for now, but for at least a couple of years, so that we give ourselves some time to rest, to see what the impacts are of the people who are currently in the park, see the other things that are going to happen in a year or two, see when COVID goes away, if it ever goes away, and just give ourselves a little bit more time. I don't think we have to rush into it, although I know that there's pressure to do so. So I would support keeping Gate D closed at this point. And I don't have an opinion about putting a timeline to review it again, like Darren may be asking you. If we did keep it closed and said, would we get enough information? Would we in 2 years or 3 years to you don't know whether the budget would change, we'd have more resources and all of that, but just given what we've discussed, what would you say an appropriate time would be? And we don't have to put a time in this.
And before he answers that, what Mandy suggested, where maybe once a month or once a quarter you have an open house where you can have group rides that come one Saturday a month or one Saturday morning a month, sometime in the next year or two.
Well, David, I'm going to say that I think while that's a good idea, I wouldn't want to start anything like that for at least 2 years. I just would like to keep it closed until we all have a bit of a rest, acknowledging the fact that we're in favor of connecting things. So that's my opinion among the commissioners. So let's see if we can look at this as a motion, the things that we talked about, and add whatever we wanted to add about Gate D, and maybe we have not 2 votes. How would we do that, Darren?
Well, Chair, I think we can do a split one if we need to, or we can see if we can get a motion to add something to Gate D that everyone can agree on.
Yep. Okay, so what we have in front of us now is what we've all really agreed upon and discussed, except for Gate D, and we just discussed that.
So I have something to just start as a starting point. If there is going to be a majority that's not supporting opening Gate D to bicycle access, some initial verbiage could be maintain the current policy prohibiting bicycle through access at Gate D. And there may be a better wording to use than through access.
I would also add until appropriate staff levels could be established or could be budgeted for. So I want the word budget in there because the council has the ability to add more people.
You don't want it or you do want it, David? I didn't
I
hear.
do.
You do. Okay.
Rather than specifying something like until and what the conditions would be, I would suggest phrasing something that the commission should continue to monitor and so monitoring, reviewing, considering pilot ideas, and we should have some statement that the commission supports the goal of opening. Maybe the leading sentences of commission supports the goal of opening up Gate D for bicycle access to increase trail connectivity and looking for anything to increase connections between open space preserves and safe routes for bicycle access.
However,
At this time, the commission recommends maintaining the current policy. And so we need to be more, I think we need to be a little more specific about what we're looking to do or what our concerns are or what we need to change. But so certainly looking for help from you guys. Maybe we want to, maybe if maybe we want to wait until the current infrastructure, the next round of infrastructure plans are, the planning is completed or construction is completed. I don't know if we want to tie it to that or not, but that does give us a timeline.
what are you trying to say, Jeff, with the evaluate potential pilot appropriate staff levels?
Yeah, I think that's the key because the infrastructure changes are relatively simple, adding a one-way sign.
Yeah.
So I don't want to muddy this with that. I think it really has to do with staffing levels and their comfort of being able to monitor the situation and staffing levels and budgeting or budgeted staffing levels. That's really the key right now.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the second
says, Darren, that's your biggest concern is being able to monitor with the existing resources.
We're adding a supervising ranger really soon that gets us up to historical coverage, the number of rangers we typically had. I don't think even with that new person, we have anywhere near the ability to be monitoring or enforcing to stop bikes from being on trails, let alone with a change that may increase it.
So maybe the second sentence would work better to kind of flip the order of things. That the commission recommends monitoring and evaluating. So just take that section and take it up to Gate D. Sorry, from at this time to Gate D. Just cut that and paste it at the end.
At the end?
Yeah. So we'll have, say the commission recommends monitoring and evaluating potential. No.
Oh.
Start a second sentence. Okay, so go ahead and delete all the way to the word monitor.
Delete all this.
Up to monitor.
Up to monitor. There.
Monitoring and evaluating potential pilot access programs. But recommends maintaining the current policy.
Yep.
I think cut out the commission. Gate D, comma, at this time.
I was hoping to have something about budgeted staffing. That's the reason.
Let's work it in if that's what people think is appropriate.
I would rather see the budget part of it stay out, David.
Yeah. Maybe it's recommends monitoring and evaluating potential pilot access programs in conjunction with available staff resources.
Yeah. Because I want the council to know the real reason.
Do we want to be as narrow as saying potential pilot access programs or just any policy changes? It doesn't necessarily need to, I mean, it'll likely take the shape of a pilot program, but it may be too specific for this.
Mhm.
Yep, no, that's good.
That's good.
I think, so you're suggesting evaluating just potential policy changes?
Correct.
You know, the potential pilot access programs.
Just delete pilot access programs or. Looks like you've got an extra space there. Nope. And then,
Okay, how do people feel about that now?
so we do need to change, just for compatibility. We shouldn't be listed, this, it shouldn't start off with the commit Parks and Rec Commission.
Right.
You want just support there?
Supports.
We need
Start with
something,
support.
but I'm not sure what. We're espousing support, but
I think support is fine. Support the goal.
is it a medium-term goal? It's not an immediate.
Maybe don't put a time,
No time.
don't limit yourself.
Yes, support the goal of.
I mean,
Okay, how are people feeling about that?
What if we were saying if we said something, opening gate D to bicycle access would positively increase connections between, would provide
support the
benefits.
goal.
Or if maybe we just made a statement, opening the gate D to bicycle access would
would support the goal. of increasing-
would provide benefits. No. After, Opening gate D to bicycle access would provide positive benefits, including.
including,
Yeah, it's overly wordy and it needs to clean it up.
including increased connections. Get rid of the two. Increased connections.
Would result in benefits, including.
What if you take out, put a period after open space preserves and take out safe routes for bicycle access?
Well, benefits are increased connections.
Okay, then leave it. I'm just
And-
gonna make it shorter.
No, that's fine. Leave it the way it is.
What do you think, Keith? Clean it up.
And I understand what you're trying to do, and I appreciate it. To me, you know, like, this is not a slam dunk. To me, this is like a 70-30. 30% of me understands what you're doing, but I all know 70% of me thinks, you know, this is not a big deal. If we open this gate, my crystal ball, which I first admit my crystal ball is not always accurate. My crystal ball says that nothing's going to happen. We're not going to have any problems. That's my crystal ball. But so I'm not going to support this number 8, but I understand why you're doing it, and I think it's reasonable. But I'm not going to support it.
Thank you. I think I was actually asking, what do you think about the wording of something that I think you're not going to support? Anybody? One comment I would make is, do we want to reorder that recommendation to move it above the dog policy recommendation to be consistent with the discussion of items within the staff report?
I don't understand why you want to do that, Jeff.
Well, if council is referring back to the staff report from the
Oh, I see.
from this
Okay.
commission meeting, or if this report is used as a basis for a staff report going to city council on the item, then maintaining a similar order could be helpful. I defer to staff if they think that's useful.
Yeah, I think it's a good practice. One thing, Chair and Vice Chair, is the way this reads, PRC recommends the City Council adopt the following policies, but we lead with sort of a
request at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah, I liked it before where everything that's absolute is on top. And then this last one that's still questionable is sort of a separate section down below.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying. I'd also note that numbers 3 and 5 have the same problem. They're not policy changes.
Yeah, but we're unanimous in our recommendation, whereas this last one, we're not unanimous.
That can be addressed in a splitting out the motion for a separate vote.
I think what I was trying to get across, Vice Chair, is that these up above are still recommendations. We recommend you do the following, whereas this one's more of a statement of opinion. We generally support this, but we're not.
Okay, so then with that in mind, should we lead with recommend maintaining so we would lead with maintain the current policy prohibiting bicycle access through gate D at this time,
and monitor and evaluate potential policy changes. for future change. Yeah, something like that, maybe.
So then you could say, we could say recommend monitoring and evaluating the policy changes in conjunction with staff resources. I think it's useful to acknowledge the benefits and work them in that as well.
I wonder if that would be better placed in the body of a staff report that goes to council to say, here's some of the feedback from the commission, including this statement.
I think it's well explained in the staff report with one of the recommendations with the 3 bullet points, and you can refer to the staff report for the benefits rather than having it as part of this.
Okay,
It doesn't make sense to me to make it part of this, so can you take that out, Darren, that you've highlighted, and see if we could just look at that and just the commission recommends monitoring and use that for our statement?
Yeah, although we've got, I think it might be just following here, we just lead with the verb and we just say monitor.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
But maintain. Or while maintaining.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing. The goal was to provide a little more balanced statement there, but that could be included in the detail of the staff report.
Darren, can you put gate down the next line with gate D so it reads together? Just push that forward.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, yeah. You lost your formatting. You can just add a bunch of spaces there in front of gate to push it instead.
Got it.
Okay, are we ready to have a motion on this?
I think I think I'd recommend having a split motion, and so first we would be voting on items 1 through 8 with but not including 6, and then have a separate vote on 6.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Okay. Is there a motion to vote on?
I'll move that we have a motion to approve the recommendation above to City Council as stated.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Lam, would you do a voice vote, please?
Lom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't unmute. Chair Cribbs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Reckbell,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Chair, that passes on a 6-0 vote.
Thank you. And now can we do a motion on 6 to recommend?
Yes, I'll move that we forward the item 6 to City Council for approval as well, as stated.
And a second?
Second.
And a voice vote, please?
Chair Cribbs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Not sure.
Commissioner Moss,
Not sure.
Commissioner Reckdahl,
No.
Commissioner Greenfield. I'm sorry, I apologize. Commissioner Lemare
Yes.
and Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Chair Cripps, that's 4 votes for yes, 1 vote no, and 1 vote not sure.
I don't think we can have a vote, not sure.
Yeah, I think it's either yes, no, or
Abstain.
abstain.
Yeah,
I mean, I could say abstain.
I believe you could.
Okay, I'll say abstain.
Okay,
Chair Cripps, then that is a vote of 4 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstain.
okay, well, thank you, and thank you, everybody, for your thoughtful consideration. Thanks to the ad hoc for all the work on that, and I think we can go to the next.
Actually,
item.
the vote here should be 4-1-1.
4-1-1. Thank you. I'll correct that right now.
Thank you.
Go to the next item on the agenda, and I'd like to remind everybody that it is right now 9:30, and this item is for 30 minutes, so that will make it 10 o'clock. And then we have the CIP review, which will get us to probably 11 o'clock, and then we have a couple of other items. So just in terms of framing comments and all of that.
Quick
Darren?
question. I want to have one follow-up question. Jeff brought up the e-bike. What would be the standard way of addressing that? Is that something that Parks and Rec has to get permission to address from the council, or can we take action to evaluate e-bike usage in parks on our own?
I think it would need to be added to the work plan.
Okay, and so how would we get it added to the work plan?
The newest news on this is we go to policy and services. Or when we do our retreat, we could discuss it at that point too.
I think it's a retreat item to
propose it as part of our new work plan.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, if you could just
Thank
give me
you,
1
Keith.
second to prepare for this next. Okay. Okay, Chair, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, but I was on mute, so now I can see your screen. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Sure.
Good evening again, Commissioners. Darren Anderson from Community Services Department. This item is on open space parks, photography and film policy, and it's an action item. The ad hoc and staff support a PRC recommendation that City Council adopt the draft policy listed in attachment A of your staff report, which I'll share after this brief presentation. The Foothills Ad Hoc Committee reviewed the existing photography and film policy as part of their review of multiple policies relating to Foothills Nature Preserve. And because the photography and film policy applies to all open space parks and preserves, this policy was separated as its own agenda item. One of the goals of drafting this policy was to make it clear when a permit is required and clarify what type of activities may be allowed. The current practice is for a permit applicant to discuss the particulars of their photography or film event with an open space or parks manager. The ad hoc and staff believe that the draft policy presented this evening will help make things more transparent and consistent. Staff and ad hoc broke the policy into 3 areas: personal photography and film, which does not require a permit; low impact photography and film, which requires a permit; and high impact photography and film, which is not allowed at all. The personal photography and film here's some of the highlights of it. That again, no permits required, non-commercial, no impact to vegetation, habitat, wildlife, or visitor use, maximum duration of 1 hour, 24 or fewer people, duration of 1 hour or less, and no exclusive use of parks or preserves, for example, blocking trails, parking spaces, roads, pathways, etc., and in compliance with all municipal codes and park regulations. And examples of personal photography and film include photography that does not require additional permits. For example, if for some reason they needed a generator, there'd be a separate permit for that. Small professional group shoots with limited subjects and crew, for example, 1 photographer, 1 to 5 subjects. And good example might be an engagement or immediate family photography session with shoots with no impact, again, to the preserved vegetation, habitat, wildlife. The low impact photography and film, this is where a permit would be required, generally associated with smaller shoots. Again, the no impact on the preserved habitat, wildlife, visitor use, and the maximum duration of 2 hours. And this would not be permitted on weekends and holidays. And some more clarification are these permits would be required if it's a commercial shoot, and the definition comes in our existing open space and parks regulation R121A. The duration of up to 2 hours, multiple camera shoot, and additional lighting, sound, or other equipments. Those would all require a permit. The high impact photography, which is not allowed, generally be associated with medium or large commercial shoots, significant impact to city-owned property or right-of-way. Traffic control and street closures are involved. Shoots with multiple cameras, photographers, assistants, and talent. Permits for photography and film will not allow the following. That is, the commercial shoots that impact the property, utilizing large portions, negatively impacting the property, or requiring those traffic control or closures. And typically those are multiple shoots and cameras and assistants and talent. The shoots on weekends and holidays would not be allowed. Shoots during park closure hours, meaning after hours, would not be allowed. Duration of a shoot for more than 2 hours, including the setup and teardown time. And again, exclusive use of a significant area within the preserve or park. The draft policy includes a number of application conditions aimed at minimizing impact to open space and parks and to the visitor experience. I won't go through all of them in my presentation, but they're in the staff report. Here are a couple of them. Utmost care will be exercised to ensure wildlife, habitat, and natural, historic, cultural resources are not disturbed or impacted. Photography and film of wildlife will be permitted only when such wildlife will not be approached within 100 feet, fed, harmed, or otherwise disturbed from their natural behavior. Drones are not allowed. Exclusive use of any significant area is not permitted. And permit fees for parks and open space may range from $324 to $2,163. And this is the same range for our special event permits. In general, the ad hoc stated that they believe the open space and parks are not appropriate locations for commercial photography and film due to its impact on vegetation, habitat, wildlife, and visitor experience. In addition, limited staff resources cannot provide proper oversight for this type of activity. This could be reevaluated in the future if appropriate staff resources were available. And similar to our other item on Foothills, this recommendation would go to City Council in February. And Chair, that concludes the staff presentation. And again, I'd like to thank the ad hoc committee for all their work on the previous item as well as this one. A tremendous amount of thinking this through and coming up with, I think, good ideas and good policy. I have attachment A, which is that draft policy open and ready to share, Chair, whenever you'd like me to.
Lon, may I ask if there are any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
There are none.
Thank you very much. So let's go to the ad hoc for any comment.
I don't have any other more comment.
I don't have anything to add either.
No, Darren's summary statement speaks for itself, I believe, in that our general belief is that open space and parks aren't generally appropriate for commercial shoot at the expense of the environment and the visitor experience and staff resources are limited, as we've already discussed. And
Okay,
so that's really kind of the general basis for all of the policy considerations which we work to develop.
let's go to the other members of the commission. Commissioner Lemare.
No comments other than I appreciate the detailed work the ad hoc did on this and the time that they put in. It's very comprehensive and looks like a great policy.
Commissioner Brown.
Just that it's a great balance of flexibility and keeping the environment protected and adhering to other city policies to keep everything consistent. So great job.
Yeah, I think it's very, very well done. I'm just curious about one thing. Darren, have you had requests from commercial entities to do a big filming in the park?
Yes. Yes, we have. Not long ago, we had a request from an automobile company to close what was tantamount to 3/4 or almost all of the preserve to do a commercial shoot for multiple hours.
Okay. Well, good to have this. So do you have the motion to put up there?
Yes. One second, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, are you able to see my?
I can see Palo Alto Open Space and Parks Photography and Film Policy Attachment A.
That is it.
That's it.
The recommendation is stated in the staff report, but I didn't know if you wanted to make any tweaks or changes to this at all.
No, what I'm seeing looks,
Example, I might suggest we cut out this little statement.
yes, the special event permit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Well, would we want to say that we recommend that the range be the same as for special permit fees for open space? Parks and open space should be the same as for special permits?
Perhaps in the, well, this is the policy itself. Would you like it noted here, just parenthetically or something?
Well, what I'm thinking about is if you were to change the permit fee range for special use permits, would you want that to be tied so that this permit range would change as well? Should they be consistent, or is it okay for them to diverge from each other?
I think it's handy to have them linked. Depending on what the request was, it may also fit into a special event permit, depending on what they're trying to do. But I like the idea of having the same range. And that's why I recommended this.
So you want to say permit fees for parks and open space photography, same as is the same as a special event permit?
Sorry. How would you like me to reference that?
Yeah, I think I would say link the two and then say in parentheses currently and then specify this range. And so the action is actually to link them and you're just giving them the reference for the current ranges. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And special event permit is the same, and in parentheses, currently.
would we want to say the range for permit fees? Blah, blah, blah is the same, but it kind of takes away by leading with range, but. Is the same. Or maybe the special event permit fee range applies to permits.
Yeah, I like that.
Applies to.
What if I put this right after?
Sure.
Can you put currently before 324?
Okay.
And do you want special event permit capitalized as well as photography and film permit, or not, neither of them capitalized?
Yeah, I was looking at the same thing, thinking, what did we do up here?
All capitalized.
All right, we'll go that way.
Plural permits. At the very beginning of the motion, I think we want to say the Parks and Recreation Commission recommends that City Council adopt the following policies related to open space, open space and parks, photography and film, or photography and film in open space and parks.
Okay.
You want that in the front.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Would it be equally okay if it ends up being as listed in attachment A? It's sort of long to have in the body of a staff report.
Sure. And you can say I think it's policy, probably not policies. Or maybe it's the following photography. Oh, maybe it's the following open space and parks photography and film policy. uh, uh, Excuse me. And then reference attachment A as needed, as appropriate.
Sure.
Why does this need to be an attachment at all? Attachment to what?
It's an attachment to the staff report.
Oh,
Do you recall the staff report for this item, rather than listing this under the recommendation, I just said attachment A
okay,
because it's 2.5 pages long.
yeah. Okay,
Did you delete it down at the bottom, Darren?
Not
yes.
yet.
Okay. So is there a motion?
I move that we adopt this.
Thank you, David. And a second?
Second.
Was that Keith?
Yep.
Thank you. And Lam, could you do voice vote, please?
Yes. Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes,
Commissioner Rectal,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemare,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Chair, that's a vote in 6-0.
Great. Thank you very much. And again, good work on the part of both the staff and the ad hoc committee on this one. Thank you. So moving on to the review of the proposed fiscal year 2023 to 2027 capital improvement program plan. Lam, I believe this is yours. And I would just say that we're very happy to be doing this in December. And having an opportunity to see it a little bit earlier. So thank you for your work on this.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members of the commission for this opportunity to discuss with you the city's capital improvement plan. So this evening, I'm sorry, Lamdo with the Community Services Department. I'd like to provide you with a brief presentation to supplement the staff report, and then afterwards have a discussion of what the commission feels the staff should be focusing on. This will encompass primarily what we are looking at for fiscal year 23. However, the capital improvement plan as outlined in the report is actually a 5-year plan. So with that, let me switch screens here and I will share screen here.
and by 23, you mean it's going to be implemented next June? Next July?
July, that's correct. Okay, can you let me know if you see my
Yes.
my PowerPoint presentation? Okay, thank you. So what I stated, this is just a brief presentation. It's primarily just to supplement the staff report, and then it'll focus.
Get to the one slide at a
Q&A.
time. One slide at a time.
Yeah, right now we're seeing the title page and then the smaller slide next as next slide.
Yes, let me see if I can swap this. Okay, do you see a single slide at this point?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Yes, so I'll begin here with sort of a outline of what is a capital improvement project. And this, for some of you, may be a recap, but this is just so that also for members of the audience as well. Capital improvement projects have to do with cities' infrastructure, and in particular, we will be discussing infrastructure that impacts the community services department. Capital projects essentially need to either extend the the life of an existing asset or provide new functional use, sort of like an enhancement to an existing asset. So a couple key factors that distinguish a capital improvement project versus an operating expenditure is that the expenditure needs to provide a useful life of at least 5 years. And also there's a dollar value threshold. It's not a hard threshold, but it's typically 50,000 or more. And in our department, it can range from several $100,000 or to our golf course renovation, which was in the millions. And then the way capital improvement projects work is it's a rolling 5-year plan looking forward. And so we, as Commissioner Moss pointed out, looking at fiscal year 23 through 27, and fiscal year 23 starts July 2022. So that is the upcoming cycle that the staff is currently focused on. Because there are multiple possibilities of capital improvement projects, we apply several factors of criteria to prioritize, and those are listed in the staff report. A few of those are that we look at city council priorities, we look at healthy and safety implications, we also look at things that are impacted by changes in code or legal requirements. We're also have to consider what our funding availability is and balance those needs. We have daily operational needs and where we want to improve efficiencies. And then also we're taking criteria that considers what is the Parks and Recreation priorities and or what the community has expressed through the commission as well. And so I wanted to provide an example and just kind of look at this as an example of a heritage park capital improvement project. This is from the fiscal year 2022 capital proposal, adopted capital proposal book. And all capital projects that we have are proposed via several factors. It's identifying a fund source. In this case, the fund source is capital improvement fund, which is in our case for community services, funded primarily by the general fund. What category it has, a location, who's going to manage it, a proposed fiscal year, and it has a project number as well. There is a description and a justification as well. And then we identify the funding source. So in this case, as mentioned, the capital improvement fund, which is in the, for community service department, once again, it's the general fund. And then we identify a fiscal year that we looking at the rolling 5-year window where we think either the infrastructure needs to be improved or replaced. And then also we consider what we have available and slot it based on fiscal year. We also take into consideration what we think will be staff capacity. So in the past, we've had to bump some projects further out into the future because between community services department and the public works department, which we coordinate projects with, we do have a backlog of projects. And so based on what we think and project our staffing capability will be to address the projects, we may bump a project. We also, while doing that though, consider what is the current lifespan and how much more can we get out of the existing infrastructure. So it's fluid. It can maybe get pushed out in the future, but brought back in as well. So in this case, this project is looking at fiscal year 25. And then this is on the funding source side. And then there is the expenditure schedule. These don't always match. There's and on the expenditure side, we look at construction costs and we look at design costs. And then we also have what's called a 5-year capital improvement project total. And in this case, because this project is all planned for one fiscal year, it's one and the same. But when you look at a larger project such as Rickenough Park that is being done in phases, we may have in year 1 an amount, in year 3 another amount, and then year 5 another amount. And that will all roll up to a 5-year CIP total. So depending on the type of project and how large it is, it may be funded in 1 year or it may be funded in multiple years. I do want to point out that going back to when we look at CP projects, it's looking at a rolling 5-year window, which is the plan per se. However, when council reviews and approves project budgets, council approves the budget for the most upcoming immediate fiscal year only. They approve 1 year's budget, and then they approve a 5-year plan. And then subsequently, because it's a rolling 5 years, as years approach, they look at the budget and approve 1 year at a time. So the process for CIP is it seems compressed at times, but it begins right about now, and then ultimately it leads to council approval in June. And so what we have for a timeline is we have in around November, staff, we start to think about what we need. We start to reassess what we want to propose. And then we also discuss with the ad hoc committee of the commission to just help us discuss and prioritize projects. And then towards the end of December and in January, that's when staff will then submit our proposal. So we have, in this case, some items that I'll discuss momentarily, what we are proposing for the next 5 years. That was attachment A in the staff report, with the focus on what we really want to get funded for next fiscal year. And we submit, as staff, we submit that to the Office of Management and Budget. And then from there, the Office of Management Budget reviews it during February and March. And they'll review not just community services, but they'll review citywide and take a look at that. They will perhaps do some shuffling. They perhaps will do some reprioritizing. And they'll make recommendations as well. And they, keep in mind, also are looking at the financial status of the city on what can be considered for funding and perhaps what we may have to defer further down the line. Ultimately, the Office of Management and Budget will make a recommendation around April to the city manager's office. And then from there, the city manager's office will present to a city council a proposed capital improvement plan. This is right around the same time that the city manager also proposes an operating budget as well. From there, there is review by the Planning and Transportation Commission sometime in April. Occasionally it is in May, just depending on the years a little bit. The timeline can slide a little bit. And the purpose of the Planning and Transportation Commission is to ensure that the proposed projects remain within the city's adopted comprehensive plan. Soon after that, the City Council will ask their finance committee to review the capital plan and also hold budget hearings of that. And then from there, the finance committee will make recommendations and ultimately will lead to a council adoption of the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And that will occur sometime in the month of June. So that's kind of the CIP summary and timeline. And then next, as the report noted, we're looking at a rolling 5-year window, and primarily with a focus on what's being proposed for the next fiscal year. And then after that, I'll also be discussing what's not on the CIP plan that we have considered, and perhaps would like some input from the commission as well. So for next fiscal year, Darren and I have spoken with the Public Works Engineering Department to sort of balance out what we think we have the staff capacity to work on between the two departments. So we are looking at proposing designing out the next phase of Rinconada improvements, which is the phase 2. Phase 1 is currently underway, and by next fiscal year should be complete. And so then looking at designing phase 2 next fiscal year, and then in fiscal year 24, constructing the phase 2 of Rinconada Park. In next fiscal year, we'd also like to do do a repair to Sunfish Island in Foothills Nature Preserve. And what this is a reference to is there is a pedestrian bridge to access the island, and that is in need of repair. We are funded every other year for dog park improvements, either via an installation or renovation. So we hope to be able to achieve that next fiscal year as well. And then we have a couple, going back to Foothills Nature Preserve, we have 2 items that we want to propose for design. As discussed earlier today, with the opening of Foothills Nature Preserve to the general public, we feel there are some needs to improve the infrastructure for Foothills Nature Preserve, both for logistics and for public safety. And so that's something that we want to start implementing and putting into design. And we also want to come up with the design plans for replacing the 3 restrooms in Foothills Nature Preserve. And then lastly, every year we have ongoing CIPs, a handful of them, to continue to work on infrastructure needs that have annual needs. These are CIPs that have to do with trail maintenance. These are CIPs that have to do with maintaining Boronda Lake. There's also some funding for court repairs or court replacements. These are tennis courts, pickleball courts, basketball courts, and such. And then we also have some funding for emergency repairs that as they come up, whether they be weather-related damage or vandalism-related damage. We have some funding for that. And so that's some CIPs that we work on every single year. So that's where we are looking at for fiscal year 23, this coming fiscal year 23. And then in attachment A of the staff report, there are other items that are proposed for fiscal years, or planned, I should say, planned to be proposed for fiscal years 24 through 27 as part of the rolling 5-year plan. Now, having said that, we also have CIPs that, I shouldn't call them CIPs, they are needs that potentially can be a CIP, where we've identified them, but they either haven't been fully developed yet, or they are still in initial discussions and exploration stage. So we've identified them, but we have not placed them in the rolling 5-year window yet. And I think these are some items that are also of interest to the commission. So in the past, we've discussed several items and improvements to Ricanado Pool. This has to do with replacing the starting blocks, and the current pool length is not ideal for competition. And so we'd like to consider extending the length of the pool and also adding timing touch pads at the same time. I think the commission is very aware of the discussions we've had with some initial stakeholders regarding the skate park. We've had a topic where we've struggled to find funding for over the years, is the Bayland Athletic Center and developing plans for the 10.5 acres. Last month, the commission discussed a gymnasium. And then we also know, due to age down the line, we're going to need to do a lot of work at Eleanor Pardee Park. In open space, we have an infrastructure that is deteriorating, and over the years we have done repairs to, but we think we probably need a large overhaul, and that is the sailing dock station in the Baylands Nature Preserve. Other areas in open space that have needs, like Buckeye Creek improvements, we discussed that, that having to do with major needs to address the creek flow and the channels as well. We've identified the former ITT site with adjacent to the Emily Renzo wetlands. There's some hydrology needs there as well. We can't forget that we have the 7.7 acres, which is sort of we've discussed having passive use there as well. And then in Foothills Nature Preserve, and I'm sorry, I just caught a mistake here, referring to Foothills Park. We have needs that over the years just continue to age, and that's the carport, the garage, and our exhibits in the center, as interpretive center as well, are not doesn't fit the educational needs that are current today. They are quite aged from the past. So, and outside of parks and open space, there's also some needs for the campus, if you would maybe perhaps call it the Lucerne Center as a whole, and signage for the community center, the Junior Museum Zoo, and Wicklow Park. They've each had their improvements over the years, and eventually probably want to make it a cohesive area and make it, we're using some signage there. So those are kind of the areas that we sort of discussed. They're not on the safety plan yet, but perhaps in the future we can slate them somewhere. And then aside from fiscal year 23, as I mentioned earlier, there are the items that are an attachment A between fiscal years 24 and 27, which are all tentative, and they can be slated, they can be moved and shifted as well. So with that, that concludes the presentation, and I want to kind of turn it over to the commission.
Thank you, Lam. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this? I don't see any hands raised.
That's correct. There are no hands.
Okay, and then let's go to the CIP ad hoc. David?
The only comment I want to make is that the reason we're starting now is that maybe there are some things that fundraising can do to get some of those items that are not on the CIP moved up. The problem is that every one of these requires staffing time. And so you can throw a lot of money at these, for instance, the starting blocks. But unless you have staff to manage the project, and not only manage it to completion, but also maintenance in the future, you have to consider that as well. So just wanted to make that comment.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Commissioner Lemire? Yes?
Mandy's on it as well.
Yes, I was asking. Go.
Oh, yes. Just a big thank you to staff for getting this information prepared. And it's especially helpful to look at the planning process as it relates to maintenance. There were a number of conversations that were helpful, and I think there was one or two items at least that were pointed out that they were slated to be sort of addressed in a coming year, but they ended up being well maintained so they could be pushed back. So you actually see the dollars coming back to you to be able to address some newer priorities that come up. And then you have the flip side of that, some very expensive bathroom projects or things that you don't necessarily anticipate. And so it's complicated, it's hard to plan out in advance and then deal with competing priorities and fly-ins. So a big thank you to staff for staying on top of it and presenting it in such a succinct, easy to follow way.
Yes, very good. Commissioner Lemire?
Yeah, I would also just like to express my thanks for the time they put into preparing this, and the detail and the different ways that we're looking at doing it. I like the prioritization and explaining that, and the process timeline, I think, is all very, very helpful. And the transparency with that is very important. And just put the projects out there and to see, it is remarkable to look at how many projects there are. And as David said, staff time is so limited, but again, thank you for putting this together and for us to be able to take a first pass at.
Okay, other members of the commission with comments or questions? I have two questions, or one comment and one question, but go ahead, Vice Chair.
Keith unmuted first. Do you want to go first, Keith?
Go ahead. I'll follow up.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to get some visibility and insight early in the sausage making process before we get to May when it really turns out. I do have a question in terms of what exactly is the nature of the input that staff is looking for from the commission this evening. But I have some more specific questions in trying to understand the details that are being put in front of us. So I'll let staff answer that question later, but that's kind of a general question, trying to understand what we're aiming for this evening, what input you're looking for from us.
Sure.
And so as I'm a little confused about what I'm looking at in terms of the projects being proposed by the department for FY23 at the top of page 4 of the staff report, and then what we're looking at in attachment A. Is attachment A what was all old, the current CIP on record from last year, and or
Yes.
is there anything that's been updated there, or the updates purely on the slide that you're showing now?
Yes, so for your first question, I'll answer that, and then perhaps Darren, if you feel free to chime in if you have additional information. What we're seeking is from the commission is several things. Are we headed in the right direction of what we're proposing? And then do you see things that perhaps we as staff have prioritized or deprioritized and that you think we need to shuffle? Meaning what you've asked about is what's in attachment A. The attachment A is a reshuffle of the prior 5-year cycle into a rolling 5-year cycle. And so we have shuffled some items there that based on what we feel we have the capacity for, or what we have the funding for, or based on what we feel the lifespan of the existing play structure. For example, sometimes we think, well, we have an outlook where we think we may not have enough funding for XYZ projects. So can we bump project A further down the line so that we can consider other projects sooner? So we did reshuffle what you see in attachment A.
Okay, and was the ad hoc, has the ad hoc commented on that and advised staff in that reshuffle before it was done, or were they shown this information later? I'm just trying to understand what the input from the ad hoc already has been.
Yes, we did share that with the ad hoc and met with the ad hoc. However, I will say that the information we were not able to provide it with a lot of advance notice. It took a while for both CSD staff and Public Works Engineering staff to coordinate and sort of figure out what we think our first pass it would look like. And so in sharing with the ad hoc, we were not able to give them a lot of lead time to look at it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
And
Keith.
And I'm sorry, and it was Darren, were you leaving something for Darren to comment on?
Just if Darren had additional comments, but perhaps not.
Yeah, thanks, Lum. I think everything you said was spot on. The only addition, why are we, or what are we asking of the PRC? One is everything Lum said, and to add on that is we also want to discuss it with the PRC and hear your good questions and ask like, well, this isn't very clear. What does this mean? What does this include? For transparency purposes to the rest of the community, so everyone can hear what we're prioritizing and why, is my hope.
Thank you. So I do have a few specific questions before moving on. The restrooms that have been planned for Coverley football field, there, Coverley Stadium and Ramos Park and another park, are these already budgeted in the current FY22 and they'll be rolled over, or what is the status with those Because I don't see them in the 23 plan.
That is correct. Coverley was previously funded, and due to several reasoning, staff capacity, engineering review, and other delays, we've had to roll those funds forward, and also skip fiscal year 23 and looking at installing it in the future. Same with Ramos.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yes, all the restaurants that you were inquiring about, Ramos and Coverley, they were previously funded, and it's not new funding, and it is funding that we are rolling forward. However, we're not proposing to roll it forward as a project for fiscal year 23. We're rolling it forward for projects in fiscal year 24 and beyond, based on staff capacity to manage the projects. Those projects will likely be managed actually by Public Works Engineering, and not CSD staff. And so we consulted with them. They, keep in mind, not just support CSD projects, but they support other projects that impact other departments as well. So they are, in essence, they have a backlog of projects to work on.
Okay, so I have a big problem with that, and I would like to raise that or note that. And I think it's very important to particularly move forward with the restroom at Coverley Stadium. And I'm very interested in understanding what the competing priorities are that make it not possible for that to move forward until at least FY24, when it was planned to be done in FY20 or 19. I'm not sure which. So that's one comment. And then looking at the previously planned FY23 details, do I read correctly that the planning for replacing Buckeye Creek grade control structures would be pushed out of 21, or would be pushed out of 23 to another year?
That's correct.
So that's been given lower priority than the infrastructure improvements that we've previously talked about and the restrooms.
The Buckeye Creek items is intended to be a design solution. It's not the funding for the solutions, and the design is being pushed out to be looked at in fiscal year 24, I believe, as stated in attachment A. I'm sorry, does that answer your question, or?
No, it's not clear. In attachment A, I see Buckeye Creek design planning to be in FY23, yet it's not in with the CIPs that you're proposing for 23. So I don't know where it ends up. So I'm asking where it ends up. And as a general comment, I think it would be helpful in seeing what you're proposing for 23, also to see what you're proposing moving out of 23.
Okay.
Yeah, what you're seeing is that there's two organizations or more involved. And when it says design, that is being done by a different organization than actual implementation. And so what you're seeing here is that there's only enough time in 2023 to do a little bit of design for something, and that's separate and distinct from the implementation of other things. So what I think I hear you saying, Lam, is that you only have staff to do design for the Foothills Nature Preserve improvements and the restrooms, and no other staff availability to do design for anything else this year. Is that correct?
Yes, that is. Thank you for that summary. We, in fiscal year 23, we also anticipate having some projects that unfortunately we will initiate in fiscal year 22, but may not finish. And so we'll continue to work on those in fiscal year 23, in addition to what we're proposing that you see here.
Okay, so are you able to answer my question? Is Buckeye Creek design being pushed out to 23 or to 24 or later? Do you know?
Buckeye Creek design is being pushed out to fiscal year 24.
And is there, and when I look at the attachment A, I see design plans in 23 for under the open space areas for the Sunfish Bridge and for Buckeye Creek. And then in 24, I see design for Buckeye Creek grade control structures and Los Trancos Trail Bridge. But I don't see any of the construction included in the CIP for subsequent years. Is that?
That's correct. That particular CIP, although we have had to push it out, was always initiated. I shouldn't say was always. Maybe looking at about 2 years ago was clarified that the funding for that CIP is the design part of Buckeye Creek Solutions. It was not to fund the solutions, fund implementation or construction of the solutions. That is something that we are going to have to approach and determine how we're going to source for funds for it.
And I don't mean to belabor this, but I do remember a few years ago when we were reviewing the Buckeye Creek improvement plans, and we were talking about the gabions and the structure, the channelization structures that were getting ready to fail, and we were pushing them out, and they were in place in the CIP for 4 or 5 years down the road. Now we're 4 or 5 years down the road, and there's nothing there. I mean, shouldn't we be concerned? Shouldn't we be concerned about this?
We in the Commissioner's Department, in consultation with Public Works Engineering, have a sort of assess and address how long we can perhaps delay this. We do know it is a ticket item that we need to get to and take action on. But at present, we think that the current infrastructure, based on another assessment, could probably wait a few more years. So as a result, we have pushed out how we manage the whole holistically, the design / funding aspect of it. You're right. This was initially identified 4 or 5 years ago, and thought that at that time we had 4 or 5 years and we needed to take action. However, we've taken another look at it, and we think we still have a few more years.
Okay, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the bridge at the Los Trancos Trail across from the interpretive center. I'm concerned that
That is not.
that was in the planning for FY24. I'm concerned about that these items aren't even in the 5-year plan.
That bridge is not part of the Buckeye Creek. Darren, it is going to be done next year, right? The repair.
The repair is uncertain exactly when. We're having a bridge analyst come and look at it this year and give us recommendations.
Right.
And is that accounted for in the CIP, or is it under 50K?
It's independent of the capital process.
It's maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, slightly different, but yes, we've got separate funds to have this analyst come look specifically at that bridge.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
That's all? Okay, thank you. Keith?
I want to clarify. Thank you, Jeff. That was one of the things I wanted to bring up. So the design is in the CIP, but the construction is not. Does that mean that it's not going to be made? And if that's the case, then why are we designing it now if it's not going to be constructed for another 5 years?
That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be constructed or planned for construction. I think the design will help us get a better idea of what's truly needed. and perhaps get us a better picture of a cost. And at that point, we assess and make proposals. Even though it's not in the 5-year plan, it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't, that if we were to eventually propose construction, that it's got to wait another 5 years. In future years, we can slot it or propose it in any time frame within the 5-year window. So if, for lack of a better term, it can cut the line and bump other CIP projects if it's got more immediacy or more need.
Okay. And when we talked about Buckeye Creek, a few years ago, there was a fiber optic line that utilities was very concerned about, and that was driving some of our schedule. Is that still an issue?
Well, maybe I could help with
yes,
that one
please.
just a little bit. Utilities has not been overly concerned about it. It's open space staff that has driven the concern about Buckeye Creek. In addition to fiber optics, there's several utilities that run along the banks of the existing Buckeye Creek that are of concern if there was a really significant washout and failure of the structures. But utilities does analyze it. They haven't voiced excessive concern. They were grateful that we did the analysis, and I think they're very supportive of doing the design work to figure out exactly what should happen. But it has not been any call for action from utilities department saying this needs to be done by such and such time. What we have is from the Buckeye hydrology study, the consultant who said you've got a 5 to some odd years left in this grade control structure system.
Okay. And was he being conservative, or do you think that things have changed?
Hard to say. I can really just rely on what our public work engineers, who are, engineers and not former park rangers, to give me guidance on something like the longevity of a grade control structure. So we're reliant a little bit on support from our colleagues in public works engineering, and they seem to feel that we do have some more lifespan on it and can defer the design to the year that you see it proposed.
Okay. On another subject, David had mentioned getting donations, and I really think that the exhibits in the various interpretive centers would be a really good, very attractive. That's gonna be a lot more attractive than fixing a carport. We're not going to get public or private funds for fixing a carport. At one time, there was hope that we were going to get in a partnership with JMZ and that they would do the exhibits for all of our interpretive centers and maybe rotate them around or have some fresh ideas. Was that just kind of lost in the JMZ remodel? Maybe this is a time to revitalize that hope.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It has sort of fallen off. The focus for the JMZ staff has obviously for many years now been all about rebuilding the JMZ and wholly dedicated to that. And now might be just the opportunity to re-engage them. I think it'd be more likely that they would be supporting us in terms of going out to bid for a redesign of that structure, as opposed to doing it themselves, though.
But the most important thing is it doesn't involve staff.
Well, it would still involve staff to manage and do the design and bring someone on, but the people in the Junior Museum have such great expertise in that. That's not saying that maybe they couldn't have capacity to help with some stuff, but I don't believe they would be able to design and build themselves a new interpretive center in terms of the displays. I don't think they have the capacity for that.
But
nor have they ever proposed that to me.
Keith brings up a really good point about the potential partnership that used to be talked about with the JMZ. And I'm wondering now with our Foothill stakeholders group, if there might be some opportunity to do something more with the environmental volunteers and grassroots ecology more than we do now.
For displays, is that what you're talking about, Chair?
Displays and exhibits, yeah.
Yeah, I think guidance from those folks
Yep.
would be tremendous and really helpful. Many ways, perhaps supplanting what you'd pay some design work to do
Yes.
in terms of ideas, but ultimately, I think it still needs to be a CIP where the city puts in funds to make this happen. I don't see it being fully funded
Yeah, but
through our
it
partners.
could be a great opportunity for a partnership with the city and other outside groups, and then some specific fundraising. So we might
Definitely.
look at that a little bit.
Agreed.
Okay, yeah, very good. When I look through this list in the appendix, there's a whole bunch of ones of irrigation. And I had two reactions. One is, if that irrigation is leaking, maybe we should cut the line and move it up. But the other side of the coin is like, well, do we really want to be adding irrigation if we're going to be cutting back? For example, the Foothills Park or Foothills Preserve, there's a huge, what was that? In 27, there was a huge irrigation money. Do we want to reevaluate and maybe shrink that and save money and also save water by not irrigating as much up at Foothills Park?
Yeah, we certainly have considered that. That is another project that's been on the books for a very long time. And when I say it's been on the books, we look at the age that a given piece of infrastructure was installed, and then they've got sort of programmed out lifespans. For example, we'll put it in a spreadsheet that says in 15 years, you've got to look at that playground. In 30 years from when you put that irrigation system in, it should be replaced. Well, in reality, some irrigation systems or playgrounds will need to be replaced many years before their actual defined scheduled date, and sometimes many years after. It all depends on the nature of how it was built and how it's maintained. In the case for the irrigation system for Foothills, we have done a number of repairs to extend the life of that infrastructure. It is performing okay, and that's why we push it out. Sometimes it stays on the list, 4 or 5 years out. It doesn't mean it's in desperate need for it and just waiting in the queue. It's there because we think it can last that long. And that's the case for this particular one. And back to your other part of that question is, do we reevaluate to say, the drought is so severe, why are we maintaining 15 acres of passive turf, recreational turf up in the nature preserve? It's a very essential question to be looking at and analyzing, and we are. And there have been parts of that turf that have been taken back and naturalized through our partnership with Grassroots Ecology.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a very good way of checking whether things are leaking? If irrigation starts leaking, is there a good chance we'll catch it, or will it just quietly leak for many years?
Well, I'm frustrated to say in some areas we are not good at catching it. A system, there's a couple systems in place. One of them tracks water flow, and our utilities department will say, hey, we noticed you've got excessive flow from such and such meter, and we go out and check it. That's the worst case scenario, that we're finding out after the fact that it's flowed. What I hope to be the case is that we've got 4 sprinkler repair people that have zones throughout the city. Unfortunately, those zones are enormous, but they are checking them every day. Every single week, we've got people out there looking at irrigation areas, running them and searching for problems. So we're catching a lot. Every once in a while, we miss ones like that we do lose some flow to until we're alerted or find it, or it gets reported by sometimes even residents.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, Commissioner.
Chair, one more comment about in response to Keith's question about if you have a design, if you say that we're going to do design in 2024 and you do not see implementation or even a phased implementation, I think that you should do like you have in 2023, where you put a TBD, because I think that's what Lam was alluding to, is that you really don't know how big the project is, how many phases you need, but you ought to put a placeholder in here that says you're going to implement it eventually, but we don't know how much it's going to cost, and we don't know how many phases it has. So could you put TBD, Buckeye Creek implementation TBD, just to keep it on the list?
Yeah, I would just further comment on that. If we have planning and design items on the CIP and they're not followed up by construction items, I question how transparent we're being and realistic. And it just seems like a I don't understand how it's not a best practice to include subsequent construction following a design. Otherwise, why are we making the design expenditure?
Otherwise postpone.
At least for planning purposes, and relying on cutting a place in line to get something done is problematic on many levels.
Well, thank you for the comment, Commissioner. You are right. I mean, there are instances, and I'll use 10.5 acres as an example, that was funding for a plan on developing 10.5 acres. And eventually we made a determination that in budget times right now, it does not make sense to proceed with a plan to develop that if there is no possibility of funding the construction and development of it. So we did remove any type of funding for the plan of the 10.5 acres. So I see your point in regards to Buckeye Creek. Buckeye Creek is slightly a little bit different, and the reason why perhaps we do still want to consider having a plan for it in place is because we don't know the exact dollar figure for this, and without planning, going through design, and going through some consultation, that gets us a dollar figure. And in the past, we've received different direction on how to go about finding funding sources for it, whether it be general fund, whether it be grant funding, or whether it be other sources. That's something that we'll have to consider down the line as well.
Okay, let me go to Commissioner Brown. Do you have any more comments?
No additional comments, thanks.
Okay, did we get everybody? I think so. I wanted to ask about the family restroom, family changing room at Rinconada. Is that someplace still in our list? It got pulled out a couple of years ago, and I'm hopeful that we are going to be able to take care of that somehow.
Yes, it is in place. It's not called out specifically by itself. We've discussed with Public Works Engineering, and it is to be included in phase 2 design of Rinconada Park as a whole. So,
oh, okay. That's great. That's great. Good. I'm sure that the families will really appreciate that. And then, is there any way in the world that the Coverley restrooms can jump the line, as you say, and get some priority? That's been going on for a long time, and there's a lot of kids there.
yes, Darren and I will take the commission's feedback and discuss this with Public Works Engineering to see what we can do about another reshuffle. I think you saw, in the staff report, an asterisk, all projects and budgets are subject to change. So it's something that Darren and I can bring up and discuss with Public Works Engineering.
Okay, and then just a quick comment for the commission about extending the length of Rinconada Pool. What we're really meaning is shaving part of the plaster off at either end of the pool so that the pool is now correct size to allow swimmers to set records when they put the touch pads in. And it's almost under the maintenance area where you drain the pool to plaster it, and then you take some of the plaster out at each end of the pool. So it's probably not like building a whole new pool or all of that.
We're talking shaving an inch or saving.
It can be as much as just as little as an inch, because if you think about swimming a 500, which is 20 laps, and you do all those turns, then you're really going shorter. So it's not very, it's this much. It depends on what the measurement of. When Rinconada was built, it was built to the specs, but then the touch pads came in, and those are required by the swimming organizations. And so you put them in the pool and they take up space. And so now that you have to accommodate for that, and it's very little, it's not like digging a whole new hole. So it's a small thing, I think. Okay, well, I wanted to say that this has, I think, been a really good discussion, and I hope that the commission can continue this so that we keep abreast of what people are planning. I know it's tough when it's budgets and taking away money and putting money back and priorities and all that. But I think it's really important that we have this information as we go through the budget cycle. So Lam, thank you very much, Darren. Thanks for this. And thanks to the ad hoc committee for working on this. So Darren, we can go to.
Excuse me, Chair, I just have one quick comment to add regarding Coverley restrooms. Just want to make the observation that we know we get significant funding each year that's specifically limited for use at Coverley, and Coverley is in a state of flux, but investing in a restroom at Coverley Stadium is a safe long-term investment, and it's something that will immediately benefit the community.
Thank you. Darren, the tentative agenda for January 25th, 2022. Wow, does that sound like something?
It does. Thank you, Chair. We've got a couple things on the list already. We've got election of the new chair and vice chair, updates from both golf and aquatics, tree protection, and court usage.
Yeah, I don't think we have any more room for anything else.
Yeah.
Court usage is results from surveys that they've been taking.
Yeah, should be.
Okay.
I think there's a possibility that tree protection may slip, which would be helpful because we've got too much on the January agenda, I would say.
Darren, will we be able to see the swimming report in advance?
Yeah, I've talked to Sarah Duffy about that, and she understands she's going to do her best to get a copy to you.
That would be great. That before it gets posted, if that's possible.
Yes.
And the golf as well. And then could we think about a date for our retreat, please?
Yes. Yeah, we can get out a Survey Monkey. I assume so. If council is having theirs in the 5th. Typically, we make sure it's after that.
Yes.
And with a little bit of strategy time after hearing what their priorities are. What are we thinking? Mid-February?
Yeah, mid-February.
Ideally, at least a week before our scheduled February
Meeting. Yep.
Or like 10 days if we're having on a Friday.
And that would be a virtual meeting, Darren?
Yes.
And we'll also have to consider that there will be a new member added to the commission who has not yet been named that we'll have to work on getting scheduled in.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay, good. All right, for the record, any comments and announcements? And I would have one at the end. So Darren, anything from the staff anymore?
Just to thank, I know Commissioner Moss is and Commissioner Rectal are be stepping down from their service for the Parks and Rec Commission. And from staff, I just want to sincerely and deeply thank you for your commitment to your community and to this commission and how supportive and helpful you've been to staff. It is deeply appreciated and won't be forgotten. Thank you.
And I'd like to second that. Your work with us is also appreciated. It's another set of eyes and a set of brains to help us make our way through this, the daily, monthly, and needs of our work. So thank you.
Well, I think probably those are the most important announcements and comments. And so I'd like to add mine. Keith, all my congratulations to you again for, moving to transportation. We'll certainly miss you. And
I'm not sure if it's a move up though.
Well, I'm not so sure about the fun part, but I have learned so much from you during the time that we've been on the commission together. I always appreciate your thoughtful questions and comments and wealth of experience. And it's really been great to get to know you and work with you. So you definitely will be missed. And I'm glad you're not going too far away. So before we go on to David, let's open it up to other commissioners who would like to say something to Keith.
Sure, Keith, how many years has it been?
It's been 9 years now.
9 years.
A month short of 9, yeah. I don't don't want to know how many hours I've spent. A lot.
You've been our senior statesman, and I know
Yes.
when I first joined the commission, it was a pretty young commission with 4 people coming in fresh and 2 members with 1 year of experience, and you were the institutional knowledge and voice of reason. Unfortunately, agreed to be chair that year. Appreciate your guidance and all your steady input, and wish you all the best. And now you get to enjoy commission meetings more than once a month.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank Keith for, again, providing a great example. As Jeff mentioned, when I came on, Keith provided a great example of what to do and how to be very intentional with this commission. And he has always provided deep analysis, and I just really, I always get from him how much he cares about our community. And I really, really appreciate that. So Keith, thank you so much for what you've done for this commission.
Thank you.
I'll just add that I thought I loved Palo Alto until I heard Keith talk at commission meetings, and it's a whole new realm. And thank you for always asking brilliant questions. And I wish you the best of luck on Planning and Transportation Commission, and the best of luck to them at answering even more tough questions from you.
Their meetings may go longer and yours may go shorter. Thank you.
So I will turn to David now and just say that I have enjoyed a long friendship with David before the commission around the Gun High School pool and some fundraising, I think, David. And I was delighted to be on the commission with him. I always appreciated comments. And speaking of people who love Palo Alto, David brought us such a great perspective, from the perspective of his grandchildren, of his hikes, of his Coverley affiliation, and ever so many other things that he's always interested in and bringing up. So David, we certainly are going to miss you. And I really appreciate everything you've done for Palo Alto and the community. So anybody else to chime in?
David, I appreciate all of your service, and especially your passion that you show, and in particular for the outdoors, but for everything Palo Alto. And I always feel that the points you bring to the commission and the energy you bring is infectious, because I can always tell how much you love parts, and I've appreciated and learned a lot from you.
Thank you, Jeff. Well said.
Well, I have a comment. I have a comment. I do really appreciate Keith, because when I came in fresh, he had already been there a 3 years. And the most important thing is this, the politeness, the fact that there is no infighting and arguing, and it's a civil organization. And I don't think that that's universal. I think that that's the most important thing, is that people have to, the best way to get things done is to be civil. And I really appreciate staff putting up with us, but at the same time, we try to treat you well. And I think that mutual respect is really important. And then the other thing is passion. Every one of us is passionate about something, but we're not all passionate about the same thing. And I think it's really important that each of us bring that passion to the rest of us, kick us in the butt, get us excited about what you're passionate about. And you're going to get some newbies in here soon, and they need role models of how to get stuff done, and how to bring their passion to the rest of us. So that's really all I want to say.
Well, I think it was well said and certainly follows your op-ed, which I think contributed to us having so many applications for the new commission. So thank you for that, David. And we certainly know that you'll be around for a long time, so we appreciate that. I just want to
I just wanted to say a word to thank David for his passion and his love for Palo Alto that comes out, and things like the hike you did from the bay to the ocean, just going through all the planning and showing people that can be done. That's a great example of it, and a good legacy.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff. That is great. That's terrific.
I
So-
love that.
I just want to say thank you. I was fortunate to work on some ad hoc committees with you, and I learned so much just from those meetings. And I think those conversations will help shape me moving forward. And I just want to thank you for everything you've done personally for me and teaching me about the commission and Palo Alto and everything, of course, you've done for Palo Alto and the lasting impact.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mandy.
I want to say thank you, David. You have so much enthusiasm. It's infectious. I really appreciate you being on the commission. You've been a very good commission mate. You make me appreciate how wonderful things are when sometimes I'm overlooking that. You're such a positive person. That's always good to have. Thank you.
Well, I think we can all be very grateful that we've had the opportunity to serve on this commission. And I continue to think that we're the fun commission, right? And it's nice that we all get along as well as we do. So I think I'd like to end the meeting on that note and call us adjourned. But I'd also like to wish you all a very happy holiday season, a time for some rest and reflection and good health. And we will certainly see you all in the next year. Darren and Lam, thank you guys for all you do for us and with us, and all of us helping to make Palo Alto a little bit better. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.